Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you so much for your company. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Lots going on today, and I'm with you all the way until 1 o'clock. But if you do miss anything of the show, you can go to my YouTube page. It's called the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Easy to find. You can hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing coming up in this hour. Donald Trump, who is imminently about to leave Windsor Castle to head to Chequers for meetings with the Prime Minister, has praised the relationship between the US and the UK, describing his second unprecedented historic state visit to the UK as truly one of the highest honours of my life. The US President also hailed King Charles last night at the state banquet as a very, very special man for making Britain great again. Meanwhile, Downing Street is braced for Keir Starmer to face a barrage of embarrassing questions today about what he knew when about Lord Mandelson's relationship with convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein at that joint press conference to be held with Donald Trump at Chequers this afternoon. It'll be the first chance for anyone to question the President on this trip, and the Prime Minister too. Meanwhile, one of the things that may come up, you'd hope it's not all about Peter Mandelson from the British press, but who knows, they never cease to dismay me. But Keir Starmer will this weekend formally recognise Palestinian state. The PM is reported to have delayed the announcement until after the state visit amid concern it could dominate the joint press on the coverage of this trip. And of course, Washington is quite rightly firmly opposed to recognition, rewarding the Hamas terrorists not only for the October the 7th massacre, but continuing to hold hostages and indeed to use these Palestinian people as a human shield. But brilliant. Well done, Prime Minister. You must be such a good man. I want to ask you about that specifically, but we're also going to be talking about London's Mayor Sadiq Khan, who has for the first time called the situation in Gaza a genocide, following on from the laughable UN Commission report accusing Israel of genocide in Gaza, a report that barely mentions Hamas tunnels or hostages, doesn't even mention the October the 7th massacre, like it never happened, which tells you everything about the people who wrote that report. I want to hear from you. With Keir Starmer set to formally recognise a Palestinian state within days, despite Donald Trump warning that this will reward Hamas, which he's quite right about. What's your reaction to that? Does it bring shame on our country? Do you think there's a good reason for him to do it? What do you make of Hamas saying, when he said he was going to recognise a Palestinian state without any requirement even to have the hostages returned, 20 of whom are still alive, just about, starved and tortured in those tunnels under Gaza City, where Israeli troops are trying to get to right now? Is this the right thing to do? Tell us your reaction. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text us on 87222. You can get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Of course, you can get in touch about any of the big topics we are talking about, including, of course, the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, saying that migrants who are fighting deportation are making a mockery of our laws, because, oh, they really, really are. But what did she expect that they would do? We'll talk about all of that, and I want to hear your thoughts on all of that too. First of all, though, let's get the thoughts of journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, who joins us today. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Lots to talk about. We'll start with Trump. We'll start with this state visit, and we'll talk about, all the pomp and circumstance yesterday. I've got to be honest with you, I'm not the biggest fan of bagpipes or brass bands. No, no offence to people who are in wonderful brass bands, but it was a long ceremony. It was a long ceremony, and of course, you watch it all and you think, Is it going to stop soon? I have a funny feeling that Donald Trump and Melania Trump felt exactly the same way. But there we are. But, he loves that pomp and circumstance. Is it right? Was it worth it for Britain to roll out that red carpet, state banquet, all these lovely words, everyone's putting on their finery, all of this, to keep Donald Trump on side, whether it's to get these economic deals, all these jobs and these investments that apparently wouldn't happen otherwise, which I find risible from any government claiming it, and indeed have as an important ally?
I mean, I think it is worth it. It's also worth noting that while it's a historic second state visit, it's also the most curtailed state visit there has ever been.
Keep it short. Parliament not sitting.
Exactly. It's the shortest one that's ever been done for a foreign leader. It's obviously being done in Windsor, so it's much harder for the sort of mass demonstrations that would have been likely in London. It's basically behind closed doors from start to finish.
Well, apart from this press conference.
Indeed, which I'm really quite
It didn't stop the BBC, by the way, yesterday, spending an inordinate amount of time, and this morning, about the protesters. I mean, 5,000 raggedy tag people, pro-Palestinian flags and all of that, turning up, or, F Trump and things like that. I mean, they don't give that much coverage to, anti-Semitism march or any other, anti-lockdown marches when we had them. Oh, no. But 5,000, professional protesters who turn up to every protest at the drop of a hat. Oh, no, very, very important.
And also, I saw some pictures of very pro-Trump people in Windsor gathering. So clearly they've been trying to make their voice heard as well. But I do think it's worth it because, and also when you talk about the investments, which I think is £150 billion has been announced, and Trump sort of has an unusually strong pull on American businesses because he's so involved in cultural questions, and some would say that he's rather aggressive when companies make decisions they don't like. So I think there is a greater benefit to having him on side, because clearly if he says jump, a lot of people in America say how high. So I think it's worth it in that sense. It's also, of course, an enormous fraud. I mean, Keir Starmer, I'm sure, cannot bear what Donald Trump says, as much of the government probably can't. So I actually think, in a sense, he gets full marks for diplomacy, because it's an excellent deployment of it. And also, I think it's been quite well organised. The fact that it was William and Catherine that met them from the plane.
That's what Donald Trump would want. He likes a bit of glamour.
Because they are the young, glamorous ones. They are popular in America, I suspect, particularly with the MAGA crowd. They are popular. Yeah. And so I think it's been pretty well executed.
And we know, the royals know what they're doing in that, with that stuff.
And Catherine sat next to him at dinner. I suspect he was rather grateful for that.
I imagine that was a requirement. Yes. That was who he wanted to sit next to. Melania looking down at him. Can we talk about the most significant thing yesterday? I mean, just briefly. Can we talk about how absolutely horrible Melania Trump's dress was? Sorry, this is a very, very beautiful, very, very stylish woman. I look at her and go, wow, most of the time, some of the outfits she wears. And I know it doesn't matter. What was she thinking? Also, these state banquets, you don't do off the shoulder, do you? Isn't it very formal? That's why, Kate always dresses like she's a dowager duchess. She does. Beautiful woman, everything. But, literally, just that's how... She knows the deal. She knows the score. Future Queen, that's how you... But it just... Oh, I don't know. But anyway...
Well, I feel so stuffy, but I was genuinely shocked when I saw shoulders at a state banquet.
Shoulders at a state banquet?
Honestly, I felt Victorian.
Handbag?
I was horrified. I really was.
It's what we're all talking about. It's what we're all talking about. Anyway, no. Look, we're told there's a huge amount of investment, this AI investment. There's something like, 30 billion here. Let's just say 70 trillion. Let's just make some numbers up. A lot of it, when people talk about investment, whether it's these firms or whether it's the government, they're often talking about investment over 10 years. So not that much then. But also, you're talking about stuff. No big business is going, well, I wasn't going to go and set up my business or expand my business in Britain, but Donald and Melania are over, and they're going to get a nice little bit of brass band action and get in a gold carriage. So now I am going to put billions on the line. That's not what happens. These announcements were all made at the time of these visits. That's part of the deal. But is there a big benefit to us?
Well, I think obviously that's going to be largely true, but I would say there are lots of companies that want to cosy up to Trump, and so if getting bigger numbers so that he's got something to say when he comes here wins them favour, then I think in the case of President Trump, there probably is a benefit to going a bit further. And the other thing is that reputation matters, and some of the stuff that circles online about Britain is not so positive at the moment. So having the most powerful man in the world celebrating our economy and celebrating investment is very useful.
It's probably good for tourism. Bearing in mind, tourism is a huge industry, a huge employer in this country as well. So, like, look at this. You've got all these pictures on American TV and American media of, Windsor Castle and the carriages and the king and queen. Americans eat that stuff up, and American tourists spend a heck of a lot of money. I remember when I was waitressing in London in my sort of teens and 20s. You knew Americans at the table. Yeah, as they're going to be big spenders and big tippers. They're spending their money. They pay for expensive hotels, and they'd go to restaurants. They go to all the shows. This keeps Theatreland in business. It keeps lots of other places, Edinburgh, Bath, York, places like that. They can't survive without American tourists. So there's a lot of fallout from these things. Let's talk about how this press conference is going to go this afternoon, because today, any moment now, Donald Trump is departing Windsor Castle. He's going to be meeting with the Prime Minister formally, as opposed to sort of sitting near him at a banquet, and they're going to be talking about it's economic stuff. No doubt Ukraine is going to come up. Now we're going to have a situation where you've got the British Prime Minister trying to sort of push Donald Trump to basically side with Ukraine when it comes to the battle with the invasion from Russia. But at the same time, you've got Donald Trump and his people, and his Secretary of State Marco Rubio is there, and he's been very sound on Israel and Gaza, no doubt saying, for the love of God, why are you planning to recognise Palestinian state days after we leave, ahead of a UN General Assembly meeting, when Hamas have already publicly celebrated and thanked you for saying you're going to do that, even if there's no peace, even if they do not stand Hamas down as leaders of those poor 2.5 million people, even if the hostages are still being held, and as a reward for October the 7th massacre, and using the Palestinian people as a human shield. I mean, that's insanity, isn't it?
Well, on the first point about Ukraine, I think King Charles mentioned the US and UK fighting tyranny together, and speaking of Ukraine, which I thought was a rather good use of his diplomacy to make an impact on Donald Trump, who's a little bit wavering at times on that question.
The king is solid on this one. He made a real point of seeing Zelensky after that, being very friendly after that mauling by J.D. Vance and Trump in the White House.
So I think that was a rather good use of diplomacy with Marco Rubio and Donald Trump in the room. On the Palestine question, I mean, you would think that the US would be angry at this decision, but actually they seem kind of indifferent, which is rather...
It's meaningless.
Yeah, exactly. It's meaningless, and we don't have any influence over what's going to happen, which emphasises how meaningless it is. I do think that...
Isn't that classic Keir Starmer politics, then? It's
just that,
and you got Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, saying, oh, there is a genocide in Gaza, after a UN commission, laughably. I mean, the report is... It would be funny if it wasn't so serious, how laughable it is, but the evidence they cite and the things they ignore. But you've got everyone piping up. This is gesture politics, which is what this Labour lot have been doing for years. But now it's serious because they're in government.
Yeah, it's gesture politics, but it's at the expense of the 20 or so hostages that are thought to be alive in Gaza, for whom apparently their kidnapping does not matter, because Hamas will be rewarded with the opportunity of statehood because of the actions they took in one of the most monstrous terrorist attacks, declarations of war that they did on October 7th.
I mean, your lefty mates aren't going to be happy with you saying that.
Well, but I mean, on the centre left, on the parliamentary Labour Party left, many of them have been involved in Labour Friends of Israel and things. So I actually think many Labour MPs won't be thrilled by this. But the pressure is coming from two places. The Muslim community, of course, is largely
Muslim
pro-Gaza.
Leaders in particular.
Yeah,
and also self-appointed men usually.
Also a sort of metropolitan middle-class white community that is constantly on these marches.
Who haven't got a clue.
They've
really moved seamlessly from climate to trans to Palestine. Seamlessly.
Exactly.
The latest virtue signalling course to show I have the correct opinions. I am a good person.
But you're not a good person when you back terrorists that do murder gay
Call me
people
old-fashioned.
and women and Jews. It's absolutely monstrous. And the truth is, this does nothing to help resolve the situation. Of course, the ideal conclusion one day, the only viable conclusion, is a two-state solution. It's not going to happen now, and unless you defeat the terrorists and you take on the evil that has, there is a genocide here. here. The genocide is Hamas and Hezbollah and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard that have it explicitly in their intention. And so when people say, oh, do you support a genocide? I say, no, that's why I back Israel.
Yeah, it's really that simple. It really is that simple. Let's talk about, I mean, we're going to talk about madness. I mean, absolute lunacy. Shabana Mahmood, the new Home Secretary. A lot of people have quite a lot of hopes for her, like, oh, you know, she seems pretty darn sane as they go. She's been fairly solid when she was Justice Secretary. She has accused illegal migrants of, quote, making a mockery of Britain's laws and generosity. She vowed to fight last-minute legal appeals against the government's one-in, one-out deal. This, as we've told, this week we're going to get some of those. There are 100 migrants who arrived in early August who have been detained, and they're supposed to be being sent to France. We're going to get some, you know, same number back. We've not managed to get anyone on a plane yet. And they're basically using the most, I mean, we've got this Eritrean man, 25-year-old, supposed to have been deported yesterday morning. On Tuesday evening, the High Court, again, oh, you know, you've got a major issue, you're trying to get to the High Court to get an appeal. You're waiting years, by the way. Oh, no, you're an Eritrean. Oh, straight to the front of the queue. At least 3 Channel migrants were pulled off deportation flights yesterday, including this 25-year-old Eritrean. Basically, it's giving him 14 days more to provide evidence to support his claim to be a victim of modern-day slavery. He arrives in this country. His mum paid £1,000 for him to come over the Channel. He arrived in this country.
Quite a good deal.
Quite a good deal. I know. Well, no, that's capitalism. You see, more boats, more, you know. The price goes down. And he's arrived in this country. When he was asked if he'd been exploited, he hadn't. Then, of course, some charities and lawyers got involved, and it turns out he had been a victim of people trafficking, but not over the Channel, previously to another country. He also, his lawyers have claimed that he could be destitute if he's in France, because you don't get a 4-star hotel and 3 square meals a day in France. You'll probably be made to live in a tent. And there has been a court case in France where people have basically said, you know, I'll be destitute, and therefore France is in breach of these rules. One of the reasons people come here is because they don't get, you know, 4-star hotels in France. But this could be used by every single migrant, every single one. Now, there are people who are trafficked in modern-day slavery, literally women being trafficked, you know, to be sex slaves, forced to work as prostitutes, are basically to be raped every single day by 20 men. My God, we need to protect those people. But this guy's mum paid for him to get over the Channel. He's not a victim. Even if he was, he can go back to France and deal with his trauma there. They are making a mockery. But here's the thing, extraordinarily, it was a charity backed by the Home Office called Bail for Immigration Detainees. The charity is called Bail for Immigration Detainees. I wonder what they do. I mean, you know, it does exactly what it says on the tin. But the government's own website states that welfare services must provide migrants who are held in removal centres with a notebook produced by this charity, which provides legal advice to people in detention, giving them template letters for using legal and human rights arguments to fight deportation. This charity also, by the way, has been funded by 400 grand from Comic Relief. So that's your and my money. So whether it's by the taxpayer, or, you know, so you don't get a choice, or whether it's Comic Relief and you might have made generous donations. I mean, make the donations, just don't watch the show, because it's literally... the relief is to not watch Comic Relief. The unfunniest night of the year on TV. Genuinely awful. But I mean, what did Shabana Mahmood think? Did she think that... those silly, useless, incompetent Tories, soon as I'm in charge, or as soon as Labour in charge, suddenly all those refugee charities and lawyers who are making a fortune out of all of this, all of those NGOs, the civil service, the activist judges, all of that's going to just disappear in a puff of smoke, and then they're going to be able to deport people. What did they expect to happen?
Well, I mean, the Home Secretary said yesterday that people that you claim to be victims of slavery on the evening before their deportation are making a mockery of our legal system. Yeah. Well, she's right, but the question, she's also responsible for fixing it now.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's almost like if you're elected as a government and you've got a majority in Parliament, and I say this to the last government as well, you have the power to change the law. Otherwise, I don't know why we bother electing governments, because isn't that one of the things they're supposed to do, to make laws and change laws? And you have the power to change the law and then make it happen.
I mean, there's clearly something farcical about the fact that we can't remove people who have been convicted of crimes, for example. I think you have to get a 12-month prison sentence before that question arises. Yeah. Now, that's a relatively serious crime. And so you've got lots
of... No one gets even 12 months now.
Indeed. So, you know, you've got lots of people that are allowed to stay. I think Shabana Mahmood was put in the job because she is seen as within government as more hardline. She was quite
I'll
well.
tell you why she was put in the job.
Respected
she was put in the job because she's a woman with brown skin.
But
I'm telling you that is how Labour think. Yeah, I know if we put her in, then they can't accuse us of racism when we deport other people with brown skin. That is all that Labour people see.
Okay, but if the conclusion of that is that
she's a perfectly talented woman, I'm just saying that's what they think.
I mean, Michael Gove said that he thinks she's the most impressive cabinet minister. I don't know how great a compliment that is, but so she is very well regarded, and she is sort of more hardline on this. I know that one of the problems Yvette Cooper had as Home Secretary, from what I'm told, is that she was constantly asking for more money to deal with the boats crisis and couldn't get it from the Treasury. So you wonder whether she was moved on because she was rubbing people up the wrong way.
I think she's got no credibility. Yvette Cooper doesn't even believe in borders. By the way, just to let you know that Donald Trump has just bid farewell to the King after a night at Windsor Castle. I don't know if they all cuddled up in the same four-poster bed, Charlie the Chocolate Factory style. I'm going to guess not. But that was what he wanted. He wanted a night, in a four-poster bed.
I think he's got everything he wants.
Oh yeah, quite right.
And give him what he wants if it means we can have good relations for 3.5 years.
Can I just go on to something? I know I need to go to a break, but I want to get to your messages as well. But I do want to ask you about Jimmy Kimmel. Now, he's a man that a lot of people in this country may not have heard of. He's a very, very famous TV host, Jimmy Kimmel show on ABC in America. Well, his late-night shows that huge stars paid an absolute fortune, even though actually a lot of them often don't get great ratings, given it's just a kudos thing for the networks. He's hosted the Oscars numerous occasions. He's a big figure, very well known. He has been pulled off air, we're told, indefinitely. Not been sacked, we're told, indefinitely. Now, let me just play you a very brief clip of what he had to say on his show, for which reason why he's now off air.
Some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Now, we know that lots of people are claiming Jimmy Kimmel, all the woke lot, who are quite happy to watch anyone else being cancelled. They would cheer to the rafters if someone like me was taken off air. That's consequences for saying things, isn't it? They're all claiming that he got taken off air over offensive comments. Now, it's been stated they were offensive comments. It wasn't. He later on went on to make various jokes. He's entitled to make any joke he wants. I have no issue with that whatsoever. I think anything's allowed to be joked about. He got taken off air because the FCC, which is the Federal Communications Commission chairman, and it's a political appointee, just like Ofcom is in this country. They can pretend it's not political. Yes, it is. They are political. They're complete hand-wringing liberals at Ofcom. Just like the European,
no, but
they are. I mean, hi Ofcom, but you are. And he described Kimmel's comments as truly sick, and he's threatened ABC and Disney, who own the network, to take action against him. What he said was a lie. Now, everyone's contract says it's not cancel culture. He's not been taken off air for making a joke, but he's made plenty of jokes about, and cruel jokes, and he's entitled to do that. That's his job. But I don't know why the entire staff haven't been sacked over this. You're in breach of contract. Every single person who's on air has got a contract saying you can't bring the company into disrepute. You can't go on air and say something that you know for a fact to be untrue. We already knew. The suspect had already been identified. We already know enough about him to know this guy ain't MAGA. He's from the left. He was anti-MAGA. And what he said was a lie. Is that cancel culture? Or is that just, if you tell a lie on air, deliberately, with malign interest, because why would you say that lie otherwise, you don't get to keep your job.
I mean, look, if every US broadcaster that told a lie was sacked, and I think Fox News might be searching for airtime.
Well, people did get sacked. Tucker Carlson.
I suppose, that was over a lawsuit rather than actually anything he said. So that was a business decision. Look,
well, mostly these are business decisions. The affiliates basically said we don't want this guy on air anymore. We're not going to hold the show. So the show was going to lose money.
Which is actually one of the things that happened. Some of the affiliates said we're not going to air this show, and then this Trump appointee was on a podcast saying, if they want to keep their licence, they can't behave like this. Look, I think it's wrong to sack him or to remove him from air.
Why?
Because it's a very mild comment, frankly.
He told a blatant lie.
The guy is from a right-wing conservative family. He's a white guy.
Jimmy Kimmel?
No, the
The Tyler
accused.
Robinson. The
Yeah,
accused.
Tyler Robinson. And that's what he's referring to. Now, I'm not saying I would make the remark. I think it's a little off the point. Like, it's not quite right.
No, he told a lie.
But
he's saying it's one of their people. The kid was clearly motivated by different things, not MAGA. But the opposite of MAGA.
Sacking a late night talk show host for a narrative he told with a punchline at the end of it, which was basically about Donald Trump, not about the murder, that is going to have a chilling effect on free speech and how TV
These
stations
people have had
behave.
a chilly... He was quite happy to see
Is it
Roseanne
okay
Barr
to do it the other way?
No, exactly. I have always defended people with whom I vehemently disagree from being cancelled. I always have, whether it's MPs or other people on air, and I'm a member of the Free Speech Union for a reason. There's a big difference. At the end of the day, if I did the same thing, if I told a blatant lie on air and they were questioned about, I would be sacked. Yes, I would, and I would expect to be. I don't remember. By the way, when we were talking about lockdown stuff and masks and vaccinations and things like that over COVID, and our station YouTube page was taken down for 3 strikes and you're out by Google here. I don't remember all these people going, oh, cancel culture. On the contrary, we had people here trying to get us cancelled because we were asking questions. And I'm talking about interviews with scientists and top medics and professionals being told, I'm trying to be cancelled and trying to be told, taken off air. I mean, I'm sorry, these people, they're complaining about cancel culture, but they didn't complain when anyone they disagreed with was taken off air.
Jimmy Kimmel is a victim of cancel culture.
No, he's not. He's a victim of his own lies.
No, it's not a lie, because they were obsessing over the fact that he reportedly has a transgender partner. Trying to distort the reality of what happened is what MAGA has been doing. They do it all the time.
No, they're not obsessing over that fact.
It's in Trump's DNA.
What's written on the bullet? So what? I mean, honestly, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come to your calls on recognising a Palestinian state and that Trump visit. We'll find out what you think about all that. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
There's a lot of Labor politicians who said some pretty awful things about President Trump, and they've had to distance themselves from those comments now that they are in office, and they have to work with him. So they have to be very, very careful around their wording. And we know that Yvette Cooper was also in that basket where she criticised US President when she was in opposition, yet she had to meet him last night when he arrived at Stansted Airport. And of course, she's not critical now because she has to work with him and his government.
Yeah. Plus, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. I'm asking you today about, well, anything we're talking about today. You're welcome to get in touch. You get to choose, including Donald Trump's visit to the UK, of course, and he's currently heading off to Chequers to meet with the Prime Minister. We'll get that press conference later today. Keir Starmer is going to formally recognise a Palestinian state within days, as soon as Donald Trump has gone, basically, despite Trump warning that this will reward Hamas. Your reaction to that, 0344 499 1000. Ellie's message to say he shames the UK. Hamas are applauding him. Truly disgusting, a betrayal to Jews and to Israel. I'd say a betrayal to the British people as well. Linda says Starmer should keep right out of it. It's not his call to make. The arrogance. Winston says Starmer is rewarding an act of barbarism. Clive says total embarrassment. I can't believe it. Well, let's talk to Anne, who's in Sussex, and find out what she thinks. Morning to you, Anne.
Good morning to you, Julia. I'm angry because I believe this will come back to bite us, even worse than the fears people have now. I'm really worried about it. I'm not pretending.
In what way will recognising a Palestinian state come back to bite us?
If I can quickly, Julia, because I know you're very busy. I watched a programme that we will never get on our media, on the BBC or on Sky News or wherever, and it was in the military hospital in Israel, a Hamas hospital, I think it is, Palestinian, and the senior medical directors, they were saying how their hospitals are occupied. They've been turned into military posts. And they've got the military personnel there all the time, the leaders. Sometimes there's 10 people at a time, sometimes as many as 100. And they are in fear, and people have died. And it was really quite awesome to watch it. I could not believe what I was hearing. And the weapons are there, and if anything happens in the hospital, it is always everyone else's fault.
Yeah.
But they are absolutely petrified. And, of course, when we get the pictures of the babies that are dying, their mothers are usually well-dressed and well-fed. And I've seen the mothers saying, but my baby has got this disability, this problem. But they are filmed around the world as if they are being neglected.
They're being starved deliberately by Israel. I mean, we've got these claims that there's genocide from the UN. Sadiq Khan, who apparently is an expert on the issue, not an expert on keeping, kids safe on the streets of London, the city is responsible for. But what do you make of that?
Well, I'm with you, Julia, because I am appalled in the same way that we have to give money and we have to fight for people who don't want to go back to countries because we'll be destitute, and our men and women are destitute on our streets and nobody cares. Our children have been, as you well know, over many years abused, and everyone has ignored it. And those who have spoken out are treated as if they are stupid and they're not intelligent. I'm sorry, I don't mean to rant, but I've been in this community working for a long time, and I hear the people who ought to be protecting people, the people who ought to be protecting our country and protecting our nation. And do you know what? I think their motives are dreadful. And they do follow the 45 goals for communism.
I mean, who knows what their motives are? And I share there's no rant there, really well thought through comments. And I so appreciate you calling. Thank you, Anne in Sussex there. We're going to go to another quick break, very, very, very quick one. And then we're going to be talking to Freddie Gray, who's the US editor of The Spectator. We're also going to be talking to Israel's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs as well about these claims of genocide and the recognition of a Palestinian state coming from the UK. Plenty more besides. I want to hear more from you as well. We'll get those calls on in the next hour or so. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. 10:37 is the time. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Benjamin Butterworth's still with us. And let's join now Freddie Gray, Deputy Editor and US Editor of The Spectator. Good morning to you, Freddie.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure you've been watching very closely and listening very closely to Donald Trump's state visit to the United Kingdom. It's all gone swimmingly well so far. He seems very happy with all the pomp and the circumstance, the ceremony, the gold carriages, the state banquet and like. But now we're down to, sort of, I suppose, the real business at Chequers. How do you think that's going to go?
Well, you're exactly right, Julia. I mean, it's almost been boring for journalists so far. There's been nothing really to talk about of any great interest.
Melania's dress. But anyway, we'll let that go.
We find ourselves talking about Melania's hat. I'm always happy to do. But no, today is the crunch point. And, of course, everybody is anticipating questions about Jeffrey Epstein and so on. But we'll also cover possibly free speech in Britain, which is an issue that a lot of Americans, transatlantic MAGA people, I usually call them, are very interested in. J.D. Vance, the Vice President, is very concerned about free speech in Britain and the British government, Keir Starmer's government's attempts to clamp down on social media and so on. And Trump has brought with him these tech titans. And so that will be the other aspect of this. We have this huge investment, this £50 billion investment of tech companies, US tech companies.
And would that not have happened if we hadn't had this trip? I mean, do these people suddenly go, oh, OK, I'm just going to put billions of quid into a new business venture in Britain, but I wasn't going to unless there'd been a state banquet for the president?
No. I mean, of course, it's not as simple as that. But I do think Trump would have applied pressure for that investment to come now so that it could be announced. He loves doing these sort of global big capital where he goes to the Middle East and extracts billions, or goes somewhere else and promises billions. It's all about making these big number announcements, and he loves doing that. But there are concerns, legitimate concerns, I think, from economists and experts in technology, who say, well, what are we agreeing to here? Is this a kind of tech takeover of very important parts of British infrastructure and so on? That needs to be clarified, and it's not at the moment.
Well, indeed, and it's interesting. You mentioned Epstein. I think a lot of journalists are going to get very caught up in that, and it's going to be. I think a lot of it is quite lurid, but it's also quite, Westminster bubble for a lot of people. Free speech, not so much. But I mean, there's also the issues of two wars on which it would seem the British and the American governments rather disagree. In terms of the Brits want Donald Trump to be more solidly behind Ukraine, and the Americans want the Brits to not do silly things like recognise a Palestinian state when Israel is in Gaza.
Well, yes, it's funny, isn't it, that on the UK trip, on Donald Trump's state visit here, they're going to sort of probably try and elide over Gaza and the differences there as much as possible. And then British delegation will go to the UN in New York later this month and grandstand about Palestine. So it's typical diplomacy. It's all just trying to get through it on the occasion itself.
And it's very interesting. We often talk on this side of the Atlantic about the special relationship with the US. Then we're told, oh, for goodness sake, Macron gets invited to the inauguration, not Starmer. They care more about, what's going on in the Far East rather than what's going on in Europe. It doesn't really matter. Yesterday, in the speech given by Donald Trump at the state banquet, it was nothing but an outpouring of love, not just for the King personally, but also for Britain, his love of Britain. How much does this relationship matter in the big scheme of things for our security, our defence, our economy, our diplomatic power, soft and hard? How significant is this?
Historically, the US and the British relationship is, of course, very, very important. I do think we Brits, and I say this as a person who loves my country, we have this slight tendency to exaggerate how important Americans think the monarchy is. Even Donald Trump, much as he loves it, much as he'll just enjoy this pomp and ceremony and so on, it doesn't mean that he's going to go back to Washington and sort of redirect all American foreign policy, international affairs and so on, so that he can please the king. It's very nice, it's very good that Britain has this advantage with Donald Trump, but I don't think we should read too much into it.
And in terms of, you mentioned, these tech deals and the economic benefits. I mean, I suppose, there's always a tourism benefit. This is pictures of Windsor Castle, lavish banquets. It's all splashed all over American TV. American tourists spend a heck of a lot of money here. It's a big part of our employment and our GDP here. But in terms of those tech investments, other economic investments, how much benefit will the average Brit get from this, given that we're the ones whose taxes have been used to pay for a lavish state banquet and all the security and everything else?
Well, it depends who you believe. According to some people, it'll create thousands of jobs. According to others, and this has been the pattern with big technology investments in the past, is that actually technology tends to lose jobs, particularly in the short term. It may create efficiencies elsewhere, we'll see, and it may be very good for the economy, but it's a debatable point, this huge cash inflow, and what actually it will do to the British economy.
And just finally, what's going to be the most difficult moment for Keir? I mean, Donald Trump, he doesn't care about difficult moments with the media. He'll say whatever he wants to say. But what's the big risk for Keir Starmer at this press conference tonight?
I mean, I think Epstein probably, if Trump goes on a rant about Epstein, which he might, because he's fed up, he wants to move the conversation on. But often when he wants to move the conversation on, he ends up creating more news. So if Trump goes on a big rant at a reporter about Epstein and it puts Starmer in a difficult position, that's one potential flashpoint.
Especially if he points out that he dropped Epstein as a friend long before these charges were brought against him for child prostitution soliciting.
Well, exactly. I mean, I suspect they'll both try and just bat the questions away, no matter how many there are. But I think probably the other issue is, of course, free speech. If Donald Trump says, I'm concerned to hear, he may, so far, in all his encounters with Starmer, he has sort of accepted Starmer's version of it and said, it's your problem.
Yeah.
But if he brings it up again, as a lot of Americans are pressuring him to do, including tech giants, then that could be an awkward moment.
Yeah, tech giants can do one when it comes to freedom of speech, as far as I'm concerned, but there we are. They don't have a strong track record. Freddie Gray, US editor at The Spectator, thank you very much. Benjamin Budworth, who's joining me in the studio, just very briefly, do you think that this could be, squeaky bum time for the Prime Minister, more so than for Donald Trump at this press conference? Or do you think, as usual, that the Westminster pack who are there will fail once again to hold him to account?
I don't know which of them wants to talk about Epstein less. Because MAGA really has been quite angry about the lack of transparency in the White House and from Donald Trump. And obviously it's been an utter disaster for Keir Starmer. So I suspect we won't get any answers to those questions. So maybe they can
just move on, can't they? Just let you know that Donald Trump is currently just arriving, his helicopter just setting down from Chequers from Windsor Castle, where he's just made his way to the Prime Minister's country retreat. He's going to be having meetings all day at press conference later. 10:45 is the time. Up next, we are going to be talking to Israel's Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs about, the Prime Minister here about to give legal recognition to a Palestinian state. Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, saying that Gaza is suffering genocide at the hands of Israel, and that UN report saying exactly the same thing. That's up next. Stay tuned.
this could be the most catastrophic set of results halfway through a government term the country's ever seen. So the pressure's really on, and I think it would be unlikely for Starmer to go before May. Unless Mandelson, delivers him an extra set of some kind. Yeah. But I think after May, it's going to be very, very tough for both Kemi Badenoch and for Keir Starmer.
DAB Plus on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 10:49 is the time. Just to let you know that the US President has now left Windsor Castle. He has arrived in Marine One at Chequers, in the lawn in front of Chequers, the Prime Minister's country retreat. We'll be spending the day with the Prime Minister. Various big meetings happening. Press conference later. We'll bring you all that here later on Talk. Right now, let's talk about something that the Prime Minister's planning to do after Donald Trump has left the UK, because it would rather anger him. It'd be a bit difficult, a bit complicated if it happened now. But in a few days' time, he is going to announce that the UK will formally recognise a Palestinian state. Where that state is, who's running it, they haven't actually found out. And certainly we know one group of people who will definitely be cheering that will be Hamas, who've all openly said that the recognition of a Palestinian state will be reward and justify what they did on October the 7th. Let's talk about this with Sharon Haskell. She's Israel's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and joins us now. Good morning to you.
Hello, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. What do you make of the decision of, well, it's not just Britain, 130 plus countries around the world, France and Canada say they're going to join Britain as well in recognising a Palestinian state. Why is that the wrong thing to do, in your view?
Well, it's quite disappointing, and it's very simple. They're rewarding terrorism. They're rewarding Hamas for the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, and Hamas said so as well. And I think that the UK truly know in depth a lot about terrorism. They know a lot about the in-depth meaning and what it means to actually send that statement across the world that you will be rewarded for terrorism. In reality, it's not going to make a huge difference. On the contrary, it's just prolonging the war. It's just emboldening Hamas not to agree to a ceasefire and to continue to fight, because they feel, and rightfully, that they will be rewarded the longer the war will continue. And that's quite disappointing, and it proves to me a lack of understanding of the situation in the Middle East and the lack of understanding of our enemies, our mutual enemies, terrorist organizations.
You say a lack of understanding. Keir Starmer's not a fool. He's been a human rights lawyer, he's Director of Public Prosecutions, our Prime Minister. He's a bright man. Why do you think that so many in the West, whether it's, again, the leaders of France and Canada and Spain and many other countries, why do you think they don't understand what's going on in the Middle East? Because I've been to Israel, I just got back on Sunday, and it's been very clear to me, I'm not saying this just because I've been to Israel or you're on my show, that this is a clear moral war. This is this is like fighting the Nazis. This is really black and white to me. Same as Ukraine and Russia, it's black and white. Why do you think so many Western leaders who could be so right on Ukraine, for instance, get it so wrong on Israel and Gaza?
Well, it's very simple, and you can see the similar characters in these governments as well. And it's not about a foreign policy. It's about internal politics and caving in to very extreme and loud voices of a population that has been changing. Look, it's not a secret. There's been a mass immigration. A lot of it is from the Middle East, a lot from Muslim countries, where children there in schools are being educated not just to hate Israel, not just to demonize Israel, but Jews. They come into your country with those anti-Semitic perspective and norms. And when they don't assimilate into your democracy, your tolerant society, and the values that you believe in, then that plague called anti-Semitism is continuing to spread. Now, quite a few parliament members are relying on the votes of those communities for their seats. And unfortunately, I believe it represents much more about internal politics than about foreign relations.
Is this, do you think, when Keir Starmer recognises a Palestinian state in the coming days ahead of that UN General Assembly, will this be him showing how weak a leader he is? Is this him virtue signalling to forces within his own party?
Well, look, beside the internal pressure and the political pressure that he's facing internally, politically, it's not a secret. You know, you can see it in many debates in your parliament, and I'm a huge fan of the debates in your parliament. You know, there's a lot to learn from it, but you can see how much pressure and how populist that had become with the changing of demography. And unfortunately, yes, I truly believe that that's caving into that pressure. I think it's extremely disappointing for us. We see the UK as a very important ally. We go back throughout history, and everything that we share together, and that really feels like throwing away to the bin years and years of, you know, diplomacy, professional foreign relations, building. And you know what? A discussion about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict together in a conversation, not one-sidedly, not to hand out a country to Hamas, a terrorist organization. Because, Julia, the reality is that in the last elections in what you call the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, Hamas won. Okay? If there's elections tomorrow, no more PLO. It will be Hamas that will take over. So he is. But
the Prime Minister, our Prime Minister has said, as part of one of his conditions, that Hamas would not be, Hamas have to lay down their, well, not, it wasn't one of the conditions for Israel, but Hamas would have to release the hostages, and they could not be the government of any Palestinian state. But it wasn't one of the requirements of getting recognition of a Palestinian state. Do you think that's an issue?
And I'm sorry, but who will do that? Who will make sure that Hamas is disarmed? Will there be English soldiers in Gaza making sure that Hamas is disarmed? Who's going to take care of it? So if he's so certain of that, why he's not waiting with this declaration until the hostages are back home, until Hamas is disarmed? Because the fact is that there was a proposition of a ceasefire with the return of the hostages on the table. And the fact is that during this so delicate negotiation, those leaders who rewarded Hamas during that sensitive time obliterate the option to bring our hostages back home alive and to put a ceasefire in place.
Critics would say, well, Israel, a week ago, bombed, deliberately targeted the people who were, the Hamas leaders who were negotiating a ceasefire in Qatar, showing that your Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, isn't interested in a ceasefire or a negotiated end to this conflict. What would you say to that?
I would say look on the reality, on facts. 3 times Witkoff put a proposition on the table. 3 times Israel said yes. Every time making concessions towards Hamas demands. Even the last one, when we sent our delegation to Doha, and Marco Rubio said it very clearly, it was Hamas that refused to sign a ceasefire. We really wanted that. And that leadership in Doha, indulging themselves in luxurious hotels, continuing this, refusing to sign a ceasefire, refusing to bring back our family members who are being tortured in the dungeon of Hamas, they are responsible for that. They are responsible for the 7th of October. And wherever they will be, we will hunt them down because they are in charge. They are responsible for the worst massacre of Jews in the most monstrous way you can imagine.
And very few people were questioning the hunting down of bin Laden for exactly the same reasons and happily cheering it on. Can I ask you finally about the UN and their report, Commission report, claiming that, yes, it is genocide in Gaza. They don't mention the October the 7th massacre. The tunnels barely get a mention. Hostages don't get a mention. Anything like that. But what do you make of that report and the fact that so many outlets, the BBC included, are taking that report seriously?
Absolutely ridiculous and appalling. Those 3 pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas activists who fabricated this report have actually resigned already in July. Why didn't they put this report out when they were in charge? Why after they resigned? This is, look, it is not just appalling, but ridiculous how pro-Hamas activists are using the international community and institutions as a political tool in the hands of terrorist organizations. And I think that the international community should be extremely worried on how easy it is to manipulate the international system.
Indeed. Just finally, just got a couple of seconds left. Keir Starmer's meeting with Donald Trump today. Whether this issue is going to come up or not, we don't know. But privately, what would you like to say to Keir Starmer today about this issue?
Well, I would say that as an ally and as a friend who is extremely worried about the future, knowing that Israel war right now is not a territorial war. It's a war about values, about faith, about religion. This is a war about the values that both of us share: democracy, liberty, freedom, women's rights, freedom of religion. If you truly, truly want to end this war, to bring back the hostages, the way is not to reward a terrorist organization.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Sharon Haskell, she's Israel's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. Appreciate you taking the time to talk. Just your reaction to that, your reaction to what Keir Starmer is going to do, apparently, after Donald Trump has left checkers. He's going to announce that he is going to reward Hamas with a Palestinian state recognition. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Give us a call on all of the topics we are talking about today, including, of course, that Mahmoud saying that we're having a mockery made of our laws by illegal migrants. That's coming up next as well. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. It's coming up to you at 3 minutes past 11. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. You already knew that. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, on your connected device, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, Donald Trump has just arrived at Chequers, and he, alongside with Keir Starmer and Keir Starmer's wife, have been. Yeah, we see Lady Vic every now and then, don't we? They've just entered Chequers for a long day of meetings. No sign of Melania. She's obviously still recovering from that weird dress that she wore last night. But anyway, Donald Trump last night praised the relationship between the US and UK and described his second state visit to the UK as truly one of the highest honours of his life. The US president also hailed King Charles as a very, very special man for, he said, making Britain great again. Meanwhile, of course, both Keir Starmer and Donald Trump are braced for a barrage of questions today about, well, Jeffrey Epstein in particular, what the Prime Minister knew and when about Lord Manderson's relationship with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein at that press conference later this afternoon. Also, Keir Starmer is this weekend, soon after the President has left the country, to formally recognise a Palestinian state. He's delayed the announcement until after the state visit, so it doesn't dominate their joint press conference, because, of course, Washington has made it very clear that recognising a Palestinian state while hostages are still being held and Hamas is still in charge is untenable. Meanwhile, the small matter of the one-in, one-out policy that involves no one going out but someone coming in from France on Saturday, yet another, complete joke of a development. A Home Office-backed charity, paid for, by the way, with 400 grand of comic relief donations, is providing migrants with a step-by-step guide that could help them thwart the government's one-in, one-out migrant returns deal. The charity is called BID, and they've received this money and benefits from charitable tax relief as well, producing template letters for migrants to use and suggestions for how they can use legal and human rights arguments to fight their deportation, as we've seen a 25-year-old Eritrean man suddenly remember a few days after arriving here that he had been trafficked, and of course would face destitution if he was returned to France because he wouldn't be in a four-star hotel anymore. We are a Mickey Mouse country if this is allowed to continue, but there we are. Even Shabana Mahmood, the new Home Secretary, has said that these people are making a mockery of our human rights, of our laws. The reality is actually the government is making a mockery of the British people. That's the reality, in not changing these laws and sorting this out. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the recognition of a Palestinian state. While Hamas is still holding some 48 hostages, some 20 believed to still be alive. We've seen the emaciated conditions they're being kept in, starved, tortured, beaten, kept in cages in some cases underground. This as Israeli forces have been entering Gaza City. Not just for the sake of it, not to kill Gazan civilians, because they've been told to leave in individual buildings. The civilians are warned, please get out of the building, you've got 10 minutes because we're going to bomb the building. But because they want to take on the Hamas terrorists who killed and took hostage so many people from Israel on October the 7th in 2023, and who are threatening to do it again if they get the chance. And they're holding hostages right now. I'm really not sure why everyone thinks that this is remotely controversial, but there we are. But our Prime Minister, in his infinite wisdom, i.e. virtually zero, seems to think that recognising a Palestinian state, the key aim of Hamas, other than, of course, killing every Israeli and every Jew on the planet, is a way of helping us towards peace. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. All together now. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1. Standard network rate message. Joining me in this on the show for the next couple of hours is Benjamin Butterworth, journalist and broadcaster. Very good morning once again to you.
Very good morning.
You're sniggering through some of that. We shouldn't laugh, but it is laughable. All of these stories are laughable, are they not? And it is interesting. We get the Home Secretary saying, these migrants are making a mockery of our laws. No, the judges, the charities, the NGOs, the civil servants, they're making a mockery of us, aren't they?
Well, I think when you've got a situation that you can sort of appeal in perpetuity and the cost of that comes to the taxpayer, then that does seem farcical. And the question is that, you know, they talk about things like the ECHR and whether that should be repealed, but countries like Denmark, for example, which has had a social democratic, a centre-left government for much of the last 20 years, it has had low migration, low refugee numbers. It sent its Syrian refugees back to Syria when it became more stable. And so it shows that it is possible, and also it is possible for a centre-left government to do it, because that's what happened in Denmark. Yeah. So there's a precedent there to follow. You
don't have to be far right. I know, exactly. And Germany and France happily deporting people. It's just an absolute nonsense. And everyone says it's interpretation of laws. No, it's not. A massive misinterpretation of people's right to... But it's fundamental. You've got a load of people involved in this, whether it's charities, NGOs, whether it's, in fact, a lot of Labour MPs. And the last Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, I asked her many times about, OK, give us a number of how many people we should accept from the godforsaken basket case countries of the Third World. And answer comes there none. At the end of the day, they actually do think no one's illegal and anyone can live anywhere they want. Well, British people say no. And they've said no at every election from 2010 onwards. And nothing keeps happening. That's why I say they're making a mockery of the British people. Let's talk about, it'd be lovely to know if this would come up at this meeting at Chequers. President Trump has arrived at Chequers for a meeting with Keir Starmer. He was greeted by Keir Starmer and his wife. We know there's a lot of economic conversation, there'll be diplomatic conversation, security, all that. Pretty sure, I'd be surprised if Ukraine doesn't come up in some way, and Gaza like to come up. A press conference this afternoon could be a little bit awkward for both men. Their links with Jeffrey Epstein. But, I'm wondering, one of the things that the biggest issues for a lot of British people will be, is Donald Trump going to give Keir Starmer some tips on how to secure our borders and deport people who are here illegally? Because he seems to be able to do it just fine.
Reports before Donald Trump arrived in the UK said that the US president was going to go gently on Keir Starmer because...
In public, though.
Yeah, so who knows what happens in private. I suspect some of the things Donald Trump says he forgets himself 5 minutes later.
This is true.
Who knows how important anything he says is. But the suggestion is he'll go gently because he knows Keir Starmer is on the ropes, and that one of the reasons for that is the Epstein link, which obviously comes back rather close to home for Donald Trump. So you wonder if he's going to be aggressive or as blatant as he sometimes is. The last time they met, he criticised Sadiq Khan, who he often does, and Keir Starmer awkwardly had to say, "Oh, well, that's my friend." So
that was so embarrassing.
It was uncomfortable, and so you wonder.
But Sadiq Khan has been attacking Donald Trump again. We were talking about the show yesterday, and it's very much I'm still here. Look at me. Look at me.
Yes, I think. Well, Donald Trump's a bit like that. I think.
Very much like that.
They have quite a lot in common. Maybe.
I would love. Do you know what? I would love to see Donald Trump and Sadiq Khan go head to head. Well, they wouldn't be able to go to head-to-head, be like head to navel. So Sadiq Khan is... because when I've had conversations with Sadiq Khan, he came up to me at a party conference a few years ago, "Why are you always so horrible about me on Twitter?" I said, "Because I think you're a really, really useless mayor." But I said to his face, "Why?" And I think I'd got to number 9, my 9th finger with all the reasons. He went, "Oh, all right," but he comes up to basically navel level.
He's not particularly tall and he's very slim as well. So
he's a tiny little thing.
I think next to Trump,
and he's not. I don't know all these horrible words people use about him. My thing is very simple. I don't like your policies. I'm allowed to criticise you if I don't like your policies.
Well, I think so. The question is, will Sadiq Khan come up? But then I think Israel-Palestine might be one of the more contentious points because, will Donald Trump feel affronted that Keir Starmer announced this despite this relationship with the US, despite them saying don't do it, and the idea that Starmer and members of the government are going to leave this summit and then go off to the UN to recognise it against the wishes of the US?
Well, it's ridiculous. Sharon Haskell, the Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister for Israel, was just on the show just before the top of the hour. We didn't get a chance to get your reaction to that. But, she's pointing out this is about appeasing his own party, his own electorate. And she's quite right. I've been saying this for years. Anti-Semitism just suddenly spring out of nowhere. We imported millions of people who come from countries and a culture where anti-Semitism is absolutely the norm. Completely and utterly the norm, it's like if we'd imported a massive load of white South Africans who had supported apartheid and then been really surprised if they were racist when they arrived here. No, really, what a shocker! We've imported that culture. It's got because of the whole hierarchy of victimhood in this whole sort of wokery graph they've got, like who's the victim and who's not. They've decided, Muslims are at the bottom. They decided Jews, who used to be at the bottom but now are white, they've decided, so they're at the top. And this crazy sort of victim Olympics that the left and the wokerati play has basically said, well, this must be you must be going with every cause that any Muslim community leader cites. Well, one of their biggest causes is Gaza, the Palestinian state, anti-Israel, and it's not so much pro-Palestinian, it's anti-Israel, and yes, it's anti-Jew. That is what its basis is, and he is pandering to that, and we see that. We saw that with Angela Rayner, the former Deputy Prime Minister. We see so many of these political leaders when they are, when they're going to visit, the kowtowing, agreeing to meetings where men are only allowed, not women, or they're segregated, stuff they would never allow any other religious group to do, and they just play along with it, and they are so desperate for that vote. I'm sorry, but it's virtue signalling of the worst kind, because it's not a virtue, it's vice signalling to get votes.
But look, some of these people that constantly go on about Gaza, they hate Jews. They support
just do. Let's just
Hamas.
be honest. Yeah.
If they simply cared, if they had a legitimate human concern about suffering, which is fine, and there is suffering in Gaza,
100%.
so talk about that. That's we should do that. But you never hear them talk about the 500,000 people who have died in Yemen. You don't talk about the worst famine in the world right now, which is in South Sudan and Khartoum, its capital, which is so monstrously ugly that no journalist can get near there.
You never hear them saying, why hasn't Egypt opened its border with Gaza?
Precisely.
Instead of what they've done, they've reinforced it and added another 3 layers of fortifications since the Gaza, the Hamas attack.
The truth is, recognising Palestine now is nothing more than a bauble for barbarism. It is telling them that if you keep pushing at this, if you keep behaving in this monstrous way,
behave as savages,
and whipping up hate, we will slowly but surely reward you.
If you literally behave as savages, and what happened, and having been to the sites like the Nova Festival site, one of the kibbutz where all but 6 of the 200 homes were burnt, mostly with families with children in them. I mean, I think you actually have to be there to realise the sheer scale and the sheer horror of the barbarism, and then to take people hostages, to torture, rape, beat them, starve them, to carry on holding them, to taunt people with videos, a man digging his own grave, looking like a victim of the Holocaust. That's deliberate. They know exactly what they're doing. To then use your own, to literally be public about that you are using your own civilians as a shield, to have an entire network like the London Underground of tunnels underneath so you can wage your war. They spent 20 years preparing for this moment, and then the British government, because they're the nice people, say we would recognise a Palestinian state, even though all of that has happened, and there has been. Hamas has at no point ever said, yeah, we regret what we've done, and we take, they could at any point down their weapons, end the war. The war would end tomorrow if they chose for it to end. But if as their whole lives says, if Israel put down their weapons, then Israel doesn't exist anymore. It is
what they want.
It is unfathomable to me that the British government is falling for the UN propaganda, the Hamas propaganda, the BBC propaganda. They fall for it as well. Although I don't believe that the war reporters for the BBC, by the way, are so stupid they don't know what they're doing. I just think the anti-Semitism has been now so rife in the BBC, they don't even see it anymore.
But I also think there's actually quite a condescending racism about how they talk about Jews in Israel, but also about how the Muslims and Muslim leaders in these parts of the world are perceived, because it's talked about as though they don't know any better, as though they're just too stupid to recognise our Western values.
Yeah.
No, that's not the case. They know exactly what they're doing, what's going on. And although there is a huge problem of anti-Semitism, I've travelled a lot in the Middle East, and I remember being in Lebanon in a gay couple that were renting out a B&B, and they told me, you're not allowed in our flat in Lebanon unless you support Israel, because we know who wants to kill us, and it's not Israel.
Well, there we are then. Just some breaking news for you. The first Channel migrant has been deported to France under the 1-in, 1-out deal. I mean, knock me down with a feather. I am absolutely blown away it's actually happened. It's a migrant from India. What basis were you even attempting to claim any sort of status in our country? A migrant from India is believed, according to French government sources, to have been flown into Paris on an Air France passenger plane from Heathrow this morning, despite threats of legal action. He's the first of up to 100 Channel migrants detained by Border Force at the start of August to have actually been sent to France. This follows 3 days of the failure to remove a single migrant in the 1-in, 1-out scheme. But I tell you, when they said 1-in, 1-out, they were saying, but it would be 50 a week. I know it's a pilot scheme, or, experimental, I think is the word that the French have used. But, when we didn't think they actually meant 1 in, 1 out. You know, when we were all joking about, weren't we, like, you know, 17 in, 1 out, you know, and all, you know, and you know, we didn't, this is what it looks like. We've got one bloke, I mean, he's from India. I mean, you know, you could be sent back to India, for goodness sake. Absolute joke. And we know about, you know, this Eritrean guy who claims suddenly remembered 3 days after arriving here that, oh yes, I was a victim of human trafficking. I mean, and claiming that he would be destitute if he was in France. You know, as I said, the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, saying that these migrants fighting deportation using these sort of legal loopholes are making a mockery of our laws, even though the Home Office backs a charity that literally tells them how to do it. I mean, it literally tells them how to do it. The charity, I mean, I just find this extraordinary because the charity is called Bail for Immigration Detainees, BID. Bail for, it does exactly what it says on the tin. It tells them how to get bail and then how to basically disappear and stay in this country. Are you as stunned as I am? I mean, genuinely, guys, 1 has actually been deported. 31,000 have arrived, and we've sent 1 back to France. Come on, well done. I mean, if that isn't smashing the gangs, I don't know what is, Prime Minister. You must be so proud. Benjamin?
Well, they've done what they said on the tin. There's 1 out.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm kind of stunned that someone from India, a rapidly developing country, I think it's got the fastest growing economy of the major economies.
I know people emigrating to India.
Exactly. So the idea that you'd have any case as a refugee from India slightly amazes me. Also, I'll tell you what's ironic. I've been trying to get a visa for India, and it's really hard. It's so complicated, I have to go into the High Commission. So, you know, maybe we should be a bit more like India.
You just can't make this stuff up. But I mean, they'll be so pleased. But what I love is the government, the Home Secretary, the Prime Minister will be sort of at this press conference. This will come up at the press conference. Finally got 1 out. I mean, he'll have been literally on his knees this morning. Please, please, for the love of God, get 1 migrant out today ahead of this press conference. But it doesn't touch the sides. The British people are just going to be laughing. I mean, just laughing. The policy itself was mad. Even if it worked, the policy, and was scaled up, it would still be mad. We'd still end up with more people here than we would otherwise, because people could come here legally, bring their families. We're still ending up paying for these people, not in a 4-star hotel or whatever, but we'll still be paying their benefits. You telling me all these people are all speaking brilliant English, they've got PhDs, they're going to be getting great jobs. What a load of abject nonsense that is. They'll be bringing their second cousin and goodness knows who else under these rules. So we're still in just the same state. It's just a slightly different bad state. The British people are just going to, I mean, you go to the pub tonight, people are going to be laughing at this.
I mean, they have put on hold the right for refugees to bring their family in. I think they have to be here, is it 2 years now? Which is normal in other European countries.
It's often taken them 2 years to get here. They'll wait.
But they are making it harder to bring relatives in, which I think is the right thing to do. Look, I actually think that we should take refugees. We should help some of the vulnerable people from around the world.
How many?
And, well, this is my point. I actually think Keir Starmer would be in a better position if he made the argument that is clearly his natural inclination as a human rights barrister, which is to say that we should help some people and have refugees and make the moral argument for that, which I would. I know some people don't love that idea. But you have to, therefore, have numbers in mind because...
I've asked every Labour representative, give me a number, to the nearest 100,000, as it will, to the nearest million, to the nearest 10 million, and answer comes there none every single time.
The problem is the world has changed, so it's never been easier for people to be mobile and to get to other countries.
That's why these older conventions don't count. Just fine. I want to come back to Jimmy Kimmel. He's the TV show, the late night TV show host. He has been sacked. Well, not sacked. He's been removed, you know, for the foreseeable future from his late night TV show. We were told because he made offensive remarks, and it wasn't because he made a joke. He's made lots of jokes about lots of things, including Donald Trump, many times. Yes, but the left is saying this is cancel culture because he's made jokes about MAGA and about Trump. But this is actually what he had to say.
Some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
As anything other than one of them. I mean, this kid, he's a grown man, Tyler Robinson, the man who's been accused of this crime. But he, 22-year-old, for goodness sake, he was clearly, we've seen, when he did this monologue, by the way, there have been 20 writers and directors and editors who would have overseen that. I mean, yeah, I'm not joking. Like that'd be the minimum. That's just a writer's room. And they would all have approved this. He knew this was a lie. He would have known categorically this was a suspect who, from what he wrote in his casings, what he's written, what he told his partner, his boyfriend, who's trans, someone who's apparently transitioning from, he thinks, from male to female. Not possible, but there we are. No, but it's not. But he from his own claims, from what he said to his parents, his views are not MAGA, they're anti-MAGA. That was a lie. If I came on air and I said something that I knew categorically to be untrue about, particularly a very sensitive issue, when you've got people with guns shooting people and calling people to die because they have different views, I would quite rightly be taken off air. I would be in breach of contract. I'd be bringing this station into disrepute. I don't come on air and tell lies.
But you're not a comedian, and this
neither is he.
This was part of a joke and narrative. The punchline of which was about Donald Trump and not about Charlie Kirk. Look, I think
the punchline had nothing to do with that statement, that it was a MAGA motivation.
Look, much worse things are said by people on the right in the US on networks and on the internet all the time, and they don't get cancelled by Trump.
I disapprove of loads of people on the right for this, and I think the right saying, like, oh, it's terrible, the left are all imbued in it. The left constantly justify violence against people on the right, which I think is appalling. But the right have said some absolutely shocking and terrible things, and I call it out on I call it out as well. Whenever any cancel culture, I never want anyone cancelled because of the view and opinion they give or their beliefs. But if you are going on air and you are stating something as categorically as a fact, which is categorically, factually, provably untrue, you are probably in breach of your contract, and you will. And if affiliates who basically people who make money for you, you're on air to make money in American TV, nothing else.
No, they don't make money anymore.
No, exactly, they don't. But if they're going to lose an absolute fortune, millions, because loads of stations say, well, we won't carry him anymore. Well, that's as they call, that's just the repercussions for you choosing to lie.
Because, people like Donald Trump and particularly J.D. Vance talk about free speech.
They are both hypocrites on that issue.
They don't want free speech. They want a free pass. That is often the case.
I agree with you.
And the reason they've taken Jimmy Kimmel off air...
They haven't taken Jimmy Kimmel off air.
Well, they threatened ABC, which is the network
they didn't know. Well, no, a
revoked.
representative of the federal board, which like Ofcom gives out these licences.
But, come on, if someone made a comment, even an inappropriate or inaccurate comment, if the head of Ofcom said, we'll take your channel off tomorrow, you would think that was absurd. And that's what Trump's official has said
Ofcom
in the US.
absolutely have the power to do that.
But it's never
And I
happened.
would be sacked before they would do that, and quite rightly.
The truth is, this is about attacking liberals on US television. There is an agenda to get these people out.
Well, to be fair,
the
liberals are getting a taste of their own medicine. I have absolutely supported anybody, whether I agree with them or disagree with them, their right to say stuff which I fundamentally disagree with and I think is horrible and wrong. But there's a difference between that and blatantly, outrightly paid millions of dollars to then tell lies and then go, oh, now I'm a victim. No, this is a guy, by the way, who celebrated every other cancellation, every single time. So I'm sorry, he's not got a leg to stand on, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Up next, going to take your calls, asking you to talk to us about, well, what you make of Trump visit, what you make of Keir Starmer waiting till after Trump has gone to this weekend, apparently recognise a Palestinian state. I think that is a source of shame for our country. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. If you disagree with me, you agree with me, you have the right to have your say. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
second day in a row, the flagship one-in, one-out scheme has been scuppered by lawyers, campaign groups, a pressure offensive actually against Air France itself.
Right.
And it seems that at the 11th hour yesterday, with empty pairs of seats dotted around this Air France flight to Charles de Gaulle, absolutely no deportations were taking place, and that became very clear within about 15 seconds of actually getting on the airplane.
So once you got on the plane, there weren't people actually on the plane that then got taken off. They didn't actually get to the plane.
Well, they didn't get to Heathrow.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. Lots more to come. 11:29 is the time. Let's get to your calls. 0344 499 1000. Nigel is on the line. He's in London. Nigel, we didn't get you in the last hour, so I want to come to you first. What do you want to have to say? Nigel, are you there, my love? There you are. Hello.
I'm here. Hello.
What do you want to say?
Well, thank you for calling me back. I'm delighted to speak to you. I'd like to speak to you about Trump and then about, of course, the Palestinian recognition. I must say that, first of all, that my wife, being the fashionista of Golders Green and Temple Fortune, thinks like you that Melania Trump looks absolutely the catwalk queen of Windsor. She looked beautiful in her
She liked, I mean, we're talking about the important matters of state today. The yellow dress, oh no. I think it's the first time I've ever seen her get it wrong, but there we are. All right, we disagree. I mean, I'm hardly a fashionista, for goodness sake. I'm not pretending, but I mean, who are we kidding?
You look fabulous. I've seen you. Don't forget that you're amazing. I wanted to say that I think that Trump coming to the country is amazing for this country. Now, look, I've just come back from the United States, and I think I'm going to dilute the argument slightly about the special relationship. It's not as special as people make out to be.
Of course not.
It was a phrase coined by Churchill. It's all about defence and war and a little bit about business. I'm sorry to say that Americans at the moment aren't very happy with Great Britain, particularly Keir Starmer and other cabinet members who have been rude in a most unpleasant way about President Trump. And let's not forget the unpleasant thoughts by the representative who seems to represent the people he wants to represent in London, called Sadiq Khan. And this is really important. You know, I've spent nearly a month there, and every American I've spoken to thinks, you know what, London great, England great, but we go to Ireland and we go to Scotland before we come to England.
That's interesting. But there's a key thing that people forget. It's like, you know, how people who feel about, you know, our royal family. You know, we might say things, but, like, you know, they're our royal family. They're our head. You know, the king is our head of state, whether you like it or not. But like that's people forget about Donald Trump is whether people voted for him or not. And there are people, you know, on both sides, massively for and massively against. He is the head of state of America. He represents America. So your average American will not take kindly to some two-bit no-mark mayor or backbencher slagging off their head of state.
You're absolutely correct. And Americans look upon the president with far more respect than Brits look upon Sir Keir Starmer with.
Well, his latest popularity ratings, I say popularity, minus 50. I mean, this is unprecedented stuff.
Well, I'm surprised there's even a scale to actually measure it. He's so poorly thought of.
I know.
You know, it must be. I mean, who's ever invented a scale? It's obviously worth a lot of money. Going back to the thing about Keir Starmer recognising the Palestinian state, I wonder why he doesn't put out a little vote about it to the Brits in this country to see what they actually think about it. It's all about collecting, accruing and securing votes for future elections, as far as I'm concerned. It's nothing about recognising a Palestinian state.
Oh, yeah, I mean, exactly. We had an Israeli minister pointing out exactly the same. Nigel, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Carl. He's in Liverpool. Carl, what do you want to talk about?
Good afternoon, Julia. Yeah, it's about this Keir Starmer going to announce Palestine as a state. You know, 99% of the country doesn't agree with that. So when he does this, it's going to seem like he's doing it like an ex-Housery move when Donald Trump's gone, you know, and like a kick in the teeth to him, like, I know you don't like this, but I'm going to do it anyway when your back's turned. You know, it damages that relationship. It's not a special relationship, but it damages the relationship we have in a way where Trump will not confide in Keir Starmer. He won't. Not going to trust him. But that's the thing. As Keir Starmer, I think it was Donald Trump or J.D. Vance had said about Macron when he said he was going to recognise Palestinian state. It's like, you know, with all due respect, it doesn't make any. It's meaningless. It's sort of meaningless, but helps Hamas at the same time.
Yeah, I just think he's fine with Julia.
You know, Donald Trump's, whether you like him or not, he has gone into America and he has just booted the back door off and gone, this is it. He knows he's only got 4 years, so he's going to do what he can and how he can to get it done. Whereas we've got a lame duck who's going to be laying for the next 4 years because he hasn't got a backbone to do anything.
Yeah, well, we'll see if he does last those 4 years. I said at the beginning of his term, there's no way to get him out, but I have to say, I think they are. I don't think he's lasting past next summer at this rate. Carl, so appreciate your call. Thank you very much indeed. 11:33 is the time. Up next, we're going to be talking to Birkbeck University Professor Ashok Kumar about Donald Trump's visit and whether or not we should be throwing out the red carpet for him. We're also going to talk about that one-in, one-out shambles, but the extraordinary case that we've actually managed to deport one migrant. I know, get the trumpets out. Where are they when you need them? We'll talk about that coming up as well. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:36 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Let's talk more about Donald Trump. He's had all the pomp and circumstance, the ceremony, the gold carriages, the red carpet rolled out for him at Windsor Castle, while Melania remains at Windsor with the Queen, with Camilla. The US President has flown on Marine One to Chequers, the Prime Minister's country retreat, where he, with Keir Starmer, is attending various meetings. Lots that they're going to be talking about. They've got a bilateral meeting. They're also going to sign a technology prosperity deal. The Prime Minister is going to present the US President with a bespoke ministerial red box style to take back to the White House, showing him items from the Churchill archives. They're going to meet investors, including bosses from GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, as well as Microsoft and Rolls-Royce. We've also got a Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, meeting with the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. They're going to have face-to-face talks. There's going to be probably a doomed attempt to try and get those 25% steel tariffs removed, although it's still better than the 50% everyone else faces around the world. And who knows what else happens ahead of that press conference today, where they're probably both going to face questioning about their relationship with the late paedophile billionaire Jeffrey Epstein, in terms of Lord Mandelson's appointment as ambassador to the US, and indeed Donald Trump's relationship with him as well. Let's talk about all of this now with Dr. Ashok Kumar. He's Associate Professor at Birkbeck University. Good morning to you, Ashok.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. What do you make of the state visit so far? Your general impressions? Is it worth it? Has it been good for Britain so far? Good for Keir Starmer?
Well, I think that Starmer's trying to present it as some kind of victory, and that's what makes it a little bit, you have to take everything that they say with a little bit of skepticism, with a lot of skepticism. I think we haven't gotten really anything out of the U.S. in terms of the Trump administration. We haven't gotten any really positive deals. We've been slapped with tariffs on some sectors that we rely on in terms of our relationship with the U.S. But if you look at the kinds of geopolitical favors we've done to the U.S., like we're the only country to bomb Yemen alongside the U.S. We had actually mobilized forces around Iran. There's evidence that even all kinds of, we sent a carrier to the South China Sea, all kinds of geopolitical, special relationship favors we do for the U.S. And so I think that doing the same thing over and over again, being sort of obsequious and slavish to the U.S. and to Trump, does not serve British interests. And,
well, you say, Tony Blair was accused of being, George Bush's poodle, but at the end of the day, we are no longer, ruling most of the world. We are playing second fiddle to our much more powerful economically and militarily, cousins across the Atlantic. Makes quite a lot of sense to keep in with them, doesn't it?
Why?
Why? Because if it's not America, who do you think it's going to be?
No, but we don't get anything material out of it.
Do we not get anything material out of it?
Not really. What it does is it alienates potential allies in other parts of the world.
Who are our allies?
We could have a better relationship with China. We don't need.
We should absolutely focus on having a much better relationship with a totalitarian murderous state. 100%.
Wait, what is this moralism? I mean, it's not a murderous.
What do you mean? What is this moralism?
Is it any more murderous than the Americans who are financing the genocide in Palestine? Absolutely not.
Sorry, the Americans. The Americans are responsible for genocide in Palestine?
The Americans are. Julia, did you just wake up?
No, I literally didn't hear what you said because it was so visible. Sorry.
No, it's not. The Americans finance, defend diplomatically to the hilt. They're
Israel,
behind what
the state of Israel.
Well.
Yes,
of course.
As we should all defend the state of Israel.
Okay, yes, the murderous regime.
Regime.
You're the only person who still defends that.
I'm the only person who still defends Israel.
That is outside of the state of Israel. The only thing people will remember you for, Julia, is your vociferous defense of mass murder.
I would be proud if the only thing I was remembered for was my defense of the only democratic state in the Middle East. I would die proud
of the Holocaust in Gaza. That's what you'll be known for.
There's not a Holocaust in Gaza. There's not a genocide in Gaza.
And
what's the
sorry, defend it is outrageous.
Ashok, you're supposedly, it always starts nicely, our conversations, doesn't it? Suppose you're an associate professor at a university.
Yes.
Do you know what the meaning of genocide means? Do you know what the meaning of Holocaust means? What is the population of Gaza now, as opposed to October the 7th, 2023?
This is just standard lines.
No, it's a reasonable question. Israel is a massive they are a strong military power with amazing capability. If there was a genocide in Gaza, their population would have gone down,
and said that it was a genocide. The UN came out yesterday and said it was a genocide.
Have you seen that report? Have you read it?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. How many times does it mention hostages?
Why does that matter?
How many times does it mention the October the 7th massacre?
Why should it?
How many times does it mention tunnels?
The genocide is occurring.
How many times does it mention human shields?
Genocide is occurring. The human shields, we're going to obliterate entire hospitals because there are human shields in there. How does that even work? So if someone kidnaps someone in this country, let's just say, puts them in a hospital, we're going to blow up the whole hospital? How are you even defending this still? It's outrageous.
We don't do that, and neither does Israel.
We don't do that.
How on earth is Israel, a very competent military state, committing genocide in Gaza, and yet the population in Gaza has gone up?
The population hasn't gone up. Where are you getting that data from? From the Israeli state? Where
are you getting your data from? Hamas terrorists?
What do you mean Hamas terrorists? It's been backed up by every single international aid organization.
Has it?
And but they don't allow any journalists in there. That's the game they play.
There are plenty of journalists in there. You don't trust Al Jazeera?
You don't allow any outside journalists in there.
Al Jazeera is it? Al Jazeera is it?
Yeah, all of their reporters have been murdered by
No, they haven't.
Yes, they have.
No, they haven't.
Yes, they
have.
Al
Jazeera has reporters in.
They've killed more reporters in Gaza.
Most of them, well, actually, an awful lot of them have actually been Hamas operatives. Some of them are actually involved in the October 7th massacre. Proven
There's no
No,
evidence of that. All you do is you
Ashok,
come
you're
on and
literally...
you're a mouthpiece for the Israeli state.
I'm a mouthpiece for the Israeli state.
You're just a mouthpiece. You don't.
You're
think,
a
you haven't said
mouthpiece
one
for terrorists,
you
then.
haven't said one critical thing. You're
I
a
mean,
mouthpiece for a terrorist state.
I'm literally
It's a terrorist
stating
state.
facts that are
Yes,
provable.
No,
They're
you're not.
How is there a genocide, and why would Israel be so uniquely incompetent at committing genocide in Gaza?
They're competently doing it. They've obliterated every single building that's above 4 floors. Like, why? 93% of buildings have been destroyed in Gaza.
That's not true. Rafah is completely destroyed. Why was it destroyed? Because all of the buildings were booby-trapped with IEDs by Hamas.
All of the buildings were booby-trapped. You really believe that?
In Rafah, yeah.
You actually believe every single building in Rafah was booby-trapped?
Hamas have been pretty open about this stuff, mate. They film it.
Not even Israel's saying this. Who's saying this?
I think you'll find the military are making that very clear. Ashok.
Yeah.
What do you make of Keir Starmer recognising a Palestinian state and saying he could do... Wait for the question.
Yeah.
Waiting until after Trump has left the country because he knows that's something that Donald Trump will disapprove of. Does that show he's got a spine or that he's more of a poodle?
Obviously, Starmer is a spineless, obsequious factotum. It doesn't even matter. But the point is that, we've continued to do surveillance over Gaza on behalf of Israel. We've continued to arm Israel. We've continued to train Israeli soldiers. And now we're going to recognize Palestine. What does it mean to recognize Palestine when they've destroyed any remnants of what could be Palestine? So it doesn't mean anything. It's just, it's meaningless.
So they shouldn't do it then?
Well, do it if you want. Don't do it if you don't. But if you want to really have an impact, stop arming and stop surveilling on behalf of Israel.
But 1%,
genocide.
1% of arms to Israel come from the UK. I mean, we've already got an arms embargo. For goodness' sake, it doesn't make any difference. The Israelis are able to continue.
30% of the munition of the materials for the F-35, which is the main jet that flies and bombs Gaza, including 2,000 bombs, including 2,000-pound bombs that obliterate everything within a 100-yard radius. Are delivered to Israel by Britain, that are produced in Britain. So we could stop doing that.
We could stop doing that. And do you think that would make a difference when Israel are fighting an existential war against Hamas terrorists? Do you think?
Existential war by murdering 25,000 children? Probably that's the official.
The official figure. No, it's a Hamas figure.
Unofficial.
It's a Hamas figure.
Everything Hamas. That's just so tired. No one buys that anymore.
Where do you think the figures come from?
You call everything Hamas. UN is Hamas.
UN is a Hamas apologist, yes. Where do you think the figures come from?
Do you just become Hamas the minute
Where do the figures come from?
Stop murder?
Where do you think the figures come from?
Every single international organization backs the figures up. No, but then they don't allow any outside journalists in. So then anything that comes out.
How would journalists collate the numbers? That's not journalists don't collate the numbers of deaths.
So they can kill as many people as they want, and you can just say all of it is Hamas. So any information that's coming out of Gaza is Hamas? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's a statement of fact. There is no information that comes out.
Therefore, there's no legitimacy, no deaths happening. There's nothing bad happening.
I never claimed that at all.
Because everything coming out of there is Hamas.
Do you not think it's strange that we see so much footage?
It's utterly disgusting that you see so much video, so much footage, live streaming a genocide.
Yeah, isn't it? It's extraordinary. We see live streaming, we see horrible images of terrible, terrible tragedies, terrible deaths of children and innocent civilians. Do you think it's strange that we never see any footage ever of Hamas soldiers being killed or being treated in hospital, despite the fact that even on Hamas's own figures, it's believed, quoting those figures, we're looking at 23,000 Hamas fighters.
Hamas's own figures are saying that they have 23,000
Hamas, when they have funerals and they celebrate the lives of their own martyrs, it's a bit of a giveaway that they are being people who are being killed by Israeli rockets.
Where is that being shown?
You need to go and do a bit more research. I can put you in touch with some people who've done lots of that research.
Sure.
Yeah, I just think maybe if you just stop just talking to people who are just waving Hamas flags in Westminster.
Maybe if you just stop talking to the Israeli consulate, then maybe...
I don't get my information from the Israeli government. I get it from independent military.
That's even sadder. You're doing it without even getting any personal benefits. It's just shocking.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do I get paid to give my opinions, Ashok? Am I being paid by the Israeli government?
You're getting paid right now.
I'm being paid, but I don't get paid to give any particular opinion. I have my opinions based on the facts as I see them.
Yeah, well.
Yeah,
You're the only person, literally, on.
Literally not the only
this.
person.
Yeah, everyone has conceded ground. You haven't conceded an inch.
No, everyone hasn't. Everyone
Tell me
that
one thing
you
you'd be
speak
critical
to,
of
you work in. I've been critical of the West Bank. I've been critical of various policies. I certainly hold no candle for Benjamin Netanyahu or indeed the two right-wingers in his government. Is that enough for you?
No, it's not enough.
No, of course it's not. Of course it's not. I'm going to have to leave this here, but only because we're over time. Ashok, I do think, because I make it a point of mine to actually talk to and listen to and read people who disagree with me. I think that you should really try doing that, and you might learn a bit more. 11:48 is the time. We're going to go to a quick break. Up next, we're going to be talking about the one-in, one-out shambles, where we've actually extraordinarily seen one Indian immigrant, illegal migrant, being deported to France. I know. Round of applause to everyone, and we'll get Benjamin Butterworth's thoughts on all of that in a moment. This is Talk.
Gordon Brown came to power in the late 1990s, and he said, you know, we're going to balance the books across the economic cycle. We might borrow during the bad times, but we'll repay debt during the good times. He stuck to that for the first sort of 3 years, and then he completely lost control and was running big deficits even when the economy was growing strongly. And, well, if you do that, then when you get inevitable recession, as we did, 2008, 2009, then you are in serious trouble.
DAB Plus, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Those conversations with Ashok Kumar always end up like that. It's so painful. I know we're really out of time, but Benjamin Butterworth, I know you wanted to come in. I think you were at university with Ashok Kumar, weren't you?
I was, and actually epitomises it. What's going on in Gaza is just the latest excuse to attack and hate Israel. You know, we were at the London School of Economics together some years ago now. and well, he makes me feel right-wing, so that says something. But, you know, he was always talking about Palestine and hating Israel then. And so you have to see this in the context of this people. Yep. It's not simply a humanitarian concern, some of which is justified and understandable. It's the hatred of Israel.
Yeah, that's the motivation, again. And also anyone, you know, I'm the only person who thinks that Israel isn't committing a genocide. I mean, other than anyone who can look at facts. I mean, here we go. But anyway, 11:53 is the time. We're going to talk right now about the one-in, one-out policy. Absolute shambles. 3 days of basically no one being able to be deported deported, all the legal loopholes being used. Shabana Mahmood, the new Home Secretary, saying that these immigrants are basically, making a mockery of our laws, when in fact, actually, it's human rights lawyers and the refugee charities who are being often paid and funded and supported by the British government who are making a mockery of the British people. But astonishingly, this morning, we understand, well, the French government has told the Telegraph that one of the illegal migrants who arrived and was detained in early August has actually been deported to France. I know, I'm as surprised as you are. Let's talk to Tom Jones about that. No, not that one. A research fellow at the Centre for Migration Control. Good morning to you, Tom.
Morning, how are you?
Very well indeed, Tom. I mean, are you as flabbergasted as we are that one migrant has actually been deported in the one-in, one-out deal?
I genuinely am flabbergasted. I think it's absolutely crazy. Presumably, it's just a very disorganised migrant who, didn't get access to the government-backed charity funding that would have enabled him to get out of this scheme.
Yeah, exactly. He obviously didn't get to talk to Bail for Immigration Detainees. They bid a charity that's got 400k money from comic relief donations from ordinary people, and is actually recommended by the government website to be someone, a notebook produced by them, providing legal advice to people in detention. So actually telling them how to write a letter to claim that they can stay. I mean, amazingly, this one migrant didn't get the memo.
It's absolutely crazy. Why are we paying these charities? This is what we're paying them for. We're paying them to defend these people.
They've often got government money.
Exactly. You mentioned the 400,000. You also forget that these charities get charitable tax relief for their actions. They are essentially political campaigning organisations that, through the Charities Act 2011, are allowed to campaign on explicitly political grounds and benefit from vast amounts of taxpayer cash and tax relief. It is absolutely insane that we allow this thing to happen.
It really is mad, and it's a bit rich, isn't it, for the new Home Secretary from a party which has basically fought tooth and nail against, the Rwanda deal, which certainly had its faults under the Tory government, is now saying, oh, isn't it outrageous that the same lawyers and charities and NGOs are doing exactly the same to our policy?
Yeah, one wonders what Keir Starmer will make of that, given his one personality trait is that he is a lawyer. But I think this is very telling that Labour are having to come to grips with the realities of operating the immigration system. One of the previous one-in, one-out migrants was stopped. He was an Eritrean. They said he was not a victim of modern slavery, which he had only just discovered on the eve of his deportation.
Hey, look, it's an easy thing to look. You might forget that. That's an easy thing. I'm forgetting, to buy milk on the way home sometimes. Forgetting you were a victim of modern slavery. Easy mistake to make.
We've all done it. We've all done it.
We've all done it. I mean, but it is laughable, and we are laughing at it, but it's actually very serious. These are, brigades of young fighting-age men, often without ID, coming from countries with no idea who they are. They turn up here. We're paying a fortune for them. I mean, largely, this guy who got deported was actually Indian, so it'd probably be easier to get rid of him. Indians are certainly not the majority of people coming, and we basically can't get rid of them.
No, we actually we really can't. We are massively constrained by our not just our membership of international signatories of international law, but in the legal bureaucracy and the activist charity blob that we have allowed to develop. Basically taxpayer funded at almost every stage that has grown up with the only single objective of keeping as many migrants in this country as possible.
Just briefly, why do you think they are motivated to do this? Is it because they are just do-gooders and they genuinely feel these people are victims? It's always young men. I'm not sure they're the biggest victims around the world, certainly not from Afghanistan. Why is their motivation?
I think that is part of it. Also, never think about anything else when you can think about incentives. There is money in doing this. And also, I believe under the law, law firms are required to do a certain amount of pro bono work, and this counts as pro bono work.
Yeah, I mean, again, but they don't get paid for it, but we're paying for the whole process anyway, because the British, government lawyers end up having to fight this, and paying the judges' wages and all of that. I mean, do you think we're going to end up seeing more than one being deported? Because I think when we were talking about this policy thing, how miserable it was if there were only 50 who were going to be deported a week. We didn't actually think it would only be one a week. I mean, literally one person.
Which is now, I think, equivalent to the number of journalists they've deported on these flights. I think we will see numbers of people now that one has gone. I think we will see numbers of people being deported, but they will be infinitesimally small compared to the increased migration flows that we've seen coming in.
And that's the key, isn't it? And of course, they will. Those people. We then have to accept. We understand on Saturday the first one in plus will be coming from France, and we'll wait to see what joys that brings. But of course, we won't be allowed to know who they are, will we?
No, of course not. Of course not. That would be unreasonable for us to ask, who these people are or where they're coming from. That would be completely wrong. We just have to take them.
Absolutely. Tom Jones from the Centre for Migration Control, thank you very much. I mean, we're laughing because it is so awful. It is now risible, is it not? Love to hear your thoughts on all that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000, or the Palestinian state on Trump's visit, what the benefits for us. We're going to be talking to lots of top guests about that, including former UK Ambassador to the US, Lord Kim Darroch. He's up next. More from Benjamin Budworth and more from you, crucially. This is Talk. We are, as you well know, the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you very much indeed for your company. If you miss anything of the show, don't forget you can go to my YouTube page. The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show is what it's called. Not just Julia Hartley-Brewer, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. And you can click subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Just breaking news for you. In the last couple of moments, the Bank of England have announced they are holding the base rate of interest at 4%. That's the latest news there. But lots to talk about in terms of Donald Trump and his two-day state visit to the United Kingdom. We had a little pomp and the circumstance in the ceremony yesterday. We had the state banquet in which Donald Trump said that his second state visit to the UK was truly one of the highest honours of his life, hailing King Charles, who we were sitting next to, as a very, very special man for making, in his words, Britain great again. But today he is at Chequers with Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, base of bilateral meetings meetings with the tech bros that he's brought over. We're hoping there's going to be some economic benefits for Britain. There's also going to be a press conference. Now, that is what Downing Street are mostly braced for, with Keir Starmer likely to face a barrage of questions about what he knew and when about Lord Manderson's relationship with convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein when he was alive. This is a joint press conference with Donald Trump, also a former friend of Jeffrey Epstein. So we shall see what happens there. Plus, we are also going to be talking about the just bizarre upset that seems to be happening on the left after the cancellation of Jimmy Kimmel, who is the US TV host who has basically been taken off air over, well, a blatant lie he told on air about the man who is suspected of the murder of the MAGA influencer Charlie Kirk. I thought they all said there had to be consequences for actions. Is it cancel culture, or has he basically breached his contract where, you know, lying blatantly on air about the motivation of a suspect means that maybe you don't have a right to be on air? Just throwing that out there for you. But we're also going to be talking about American cancer patient, also a Trump supporter, Deborah Anderson, who was confronted by British police officers, told to apologise for online posts or face an investigation by Thames Valley Police. They visited her home back in June. She was told someone had complained about her social media posts. They've refused to tell her what those posts were or who complained. Yet she was threatened with police action. We're going to be talking about that as well. Plus, the Office of Budget Responsibility has told Rachel Reeves it's going to downgrade its productivity estimates, leaving the Chancellor needing to find billions more pounds to balance the books. We'll be talking about that as the productivity failure in this country has left the average family, we're told now, £20,000, well, £20,000 worse off over the last decade or so. We'll talk about that coming up. Right now, let me introduce you to Benjamin Butterworth. He's a journalist and broadcaster and has been joining us throughout the show. A very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
We've been asking people to get in touch, and they have been in the droves, about Keir Starmer. We're told is going to formally recognise a Palestinian state within days, waiting until Trump has left the country. And Donald Trump, of course, says that Macron and Mark Carney in Canada and Keir Starmer doing this basically won't make a difference. It's meaningless. It certainly won't make a blind bit of difference to Israel, but it does make a difference to Hamas. It's rewarding Hamas. They've already celebrated and thanked the Prime Minister for saying that he would grant, he believes in there should be a Palestinian state that he would recognise. We don't know who'd be in charge of it. We don't know where the actual borders are, who the people are, and there's certainly no chance of a democracy. But, yeah, let's recognise the state. I'm asking for you to give a call in on that. Also, your thoughts on Donald Trump and what we're going to get out of this visit, and indeed the revelation that we've had in the last half hour or so, that shambles of a policy, the one in, one out policy of channel migrants being returned to France in return for us getting one back, them being legitimate and then being able to bring all their mates. 3 days in a row, this government has failed to get anyone on those planes. Including a 25-year-old Eritrean man who basically suddenly remembered that he had been trafficked around Europe, and that was why he couldn't be sent back to France. Also be destitute because he wouldn't get a 4-star hotel. I genuinely am telling you that. But one man has managed to be deported. Yes, this morning, an Indian man who came to Britain in early August on one of the boats where all the people were detained by the government ahead of deportation, has been deported on an Air France flight to Paris. On Friday, we may see others, who knows. On Saturday, we're going to certainly have arrivals from France, no matter how many people we actually deport. Benjamin Butterworth, I mean, there's a lot going on. There always is. I think the niceties of the state banquet last night, people have moved on from that. The question is whether we're going to get anything out of this state visit. Are we risking angering our closest military and security and economic ally, Donald Trump, by siding with Hamas over Israel by the recognition of a Palestinian state, while they still hold Israeli civilians hostage, starved and tortured in tunnels under Gaza City?
Well, we know that US representatives, since it was announced that is the British plan, have criticised the UK for doing it, but also said it won't make the blind bit of difference. So it's certainly one of the contentious areas that could come up in the press conference later today between the two leaders. I wonder whether, Donald Trump, I think, is inclined to be diplomatic. We know that it's been said that he'll be gentle on the Prime Minister before he arrived here. But what the UK is doing, I think, maybe it's trying to win favours with other countries like Canada and other Western nations that have done this.
Let's choose Canada or America as an ally. I've got to go with America.
But it's also, it is an abject moral failing to empower and excuse terrorist acts. It is not in the British modern history. That is not how we behave.
The recognition of Palestinian state, the four things that were laid out were all requirements of Israel. Not one of them included any requirement on Hamas to actually, lay down their arms, to release the hostages or anything. I mean, nothing.
Precisely. And if you say that unless there is a ceasefire, we will recognise the Palestinian state, well, then what is the point of Hamas having a ceasefire? Because they get exactly what they want by continuing to be barbers.
Yeah, it really is quite extraordinary, but there we are. Right, well, let's talk more about what is going on behind the scenes to Chequers with someone who would know more about this than most of us. He's Kim Darroch, now Lord Darroch, former UK ambassador to the United States and former national security advisor to Prime Minister as well. A very good afternoon to you, Lord Darroch.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Right, look, we've seen all the niceties. We've seen the stuff that's happening on camera, and we know there's going to be a presentation and looking at some of Churchill's documents and all of that. We've had the state banquet. The real business is for Britain, as opposed to for Donald Trump, which is what he wanted, the pomp and circumstance and red carpet and gold carriages yesterday. The real business is happening right now behind closed doors. What will be going on?
Yeah, you're right. It's the talks between Starmer and Trump at Chequers. First thing, Julia, is let's not discount this, 30 billion investment by Microsoft and Nvidia in what they call frontier technology in the UK. Now, that's as much as anything a recognition that we have some absolutely brilliant scientists in this field who are certainly amongst the best in the world. And these two big tech giants in America recognise that.
But wouldn't that have happened anyway? That's not something. That's not something that's happened as a result.
That's fair. That might have happened anyway. What Starmer and Trump will be talking about today, I think there are 3 or 4 headlines there. I think one of them will be Ukraine, where the Americans are talking about putting pressure on Europe to put tariffs on China and India because they're the big global purchasers of Russian oil. And if they weren't doing that, then the Russians would find it much harder to fight the war in Ukraine. And that's, some of us will have some instinctive sympathy with that, but it's going to be very difficult, especially for Europe, because some of them are just quite hooked on supplies of Russian oil.
But it is extraordinary. We've had economic sanctions for a war that started 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, and there are still European nations who talk the talk. They'll vote at the UN, but they're still taking Russian gas and oil.
Entirely fair comment. And this has been one of the main criticisms which the Americans rightly have had a European position on Ukraine, and it's been a real source of funds for Russia to fight the war. So that's fair comment. And now we may be coming to a real crunch point on this. We will see. But anyway, that summit in Alaska that Trump had with Putin looks not to achieve very much. Putin seems not to have been deflected an inch from his course. So Starmer will be talking to Trump about whether he thinks there is actually any chance of Putin agreeing to a ceasefire and some sort of negotiations on a peace deal. And I guess Trump may be saying, well, what do you think about secondary tariffs on China and India? And I don't know, but you guys will find out in the media soon enough quite what position the British are going to take on that.
Yeah. And of course, we think, Gaza, the Palestinian state, we've just been discussing that with numerous guests and we've got people calling in on that. The decision to recognise the Palestinian state, has ruffled a lot of feathers in Washington, but and here in the UK, I think, as well. Do you think that is announcing that formally, waiting until Donald Trump has left the country? Do you think that just sort of shows it rather a weakness? Is it a bit two-faced?
Look, views will differ on this, and look, a lot of us former diplomats have some doubts about whether this is the moment to recognise a Palestinian state. But I think Keir Starmer, who saw Trump a few weeks ago, will have talked him through are doing this. So I don't think it'll come as a surprise to Trump. And Trump said a couple of things about how America is not going to do that and how they don't support us doing that. But I kind of think, as your studio guest has said, he's sort of giving us a pass on this because in the interests of his relationship with Starmer, doesn't want to pick a fight on this particular issue or whatever.
Because it doesn't really matter. It's not. There isn't a Palestinian state. There's not going to be one in the near future.
It's a fair point. I mean, one of the questionable aspects of this decision is we have criteria for recognising a state like secure borders, like a single government rather than, as you have in Palestine, Hamas and Fatah in charge in the West Bank. That you have a government that you can do business with. And it doesn't meet any of these criteria, so it's a gesture. And the Israelis will be very annoyed. There'll be a night of celebrations, no doubt, on the West Bank, but it's not going to change the situation on the ground, I'm afraid.
Okay, and as a former national security advisor, as opposed to just, not so, don't be just, but as Amelia, as a diplomat, I mean, you understand the threat as a national security advisor of Islamist terrorism and not just across the Middle East, but those people, waging war on the West as well. A lot of these organisations have a deliberate policy. It's not just anti-Israel, it's anti-the West, anti-America, anti-Britain. How big a threat is that to us?
Oh, there's a substantial threat from Islamic terrorism. There has been for a long, long time. By the way, I wouldn't nowadays, given how comprehensive the Israeli operation has been against Hamas, I wouldn't put Hamas at the top of the list of
well, Israel didn't put Hamas at the top of the list before October the 7th.
No. And I mean, I still think there is a lot to be appalled about in the way the Israelis have conducted this operation in terms of the civilian casualties. But nevertheless, yes, Islamic terrorism is a continuing and serious threat to all of us in the West.
Perhaps not a good idea to recognise the state, which is what the demands are of those various states. But there we are, organisations. As a former UK ambassador to the United States, you are a man in Washington. What do you make of the forcing out, because he certainly didn't resign, of Lord Mandelson in that role, appointed only in January, when everyone knew about his links with Jeffrey Epstein? Certainly the Prime Minister did, knew that they were good friends, knew about the 2 other times he'd had to be forced out due to financial scandals from other big jobs, knew about his commercial links with business in China, all of which I think each one alone would have meant he was an unsuitable person to appoint as our ambassador at such the singly most important ambassadorial role there is for the British government. What do you make of the fallout of him being forced out?
Julia, this is, as you know better than I do, this has been chewed over to death in the media for the last few days. And I think the government's line, which is that they always recognised it was a high-risk appointment, but they thought it was taking the risk, is about what you're going to get from them on this. And obviously, with hindsight, it looks to have been a mistake, a bad judgment. I mean, obviously, the exchanges with Epstein were really impossible to understand or to condone, especially since they took place, and the support came from after Epstein's first conviction, and you really can't explain or justify that at all. All that said, first 8 months in office, Peter Mannelson's ambassador delivered a trade deal which it's not perfect, and certainly it puts tariffs on us that weren't there before, so we're worse off, but at 10% is better than almost anyone else's. He seems to have established a close relationship with a lot of people in the White House, including the president. Apparently had an hour with the president only about a couple of weeks ago. And this technology agreement and this new investment, he will have played a part in that, and that's a good deal. So that's not a bad record.
Wouldn't any other ambassador been able to do the same?
Well,
you were in that job. Could you not have done the same? I mean, obviously, for those who don't know, and I'm sure you understand, to explain, back in 2019, you actually had to resign from your position as ambassador because of the leaking of diplomatic cables in which you'd been critical of the Trump presidential administration. These things are meant to stay private, and they didn't stay private.
Yes. Look, of course, I like to think that I would have been able to deliver a similar trio of successes, and that a lot of my, former colleagues in the Foreign Service, if one of them gets appointed to the job, they'll do it well as well. But my point is simply, with hindsight, this appointment looks to have been a mistake, and after 8 months, Lord Manderson's resigned.
Is it a mistake in hindsight? Because Keir Starmer says, if I'd known then what I know now. Isn't what we knew in January enough for him not to have been appointed in the first place?
Well, then you get into all that detail, and it's a fair question, Julia.
I mean, a man who represents our country in the most senior and diplomatic role, who was busy mates, and we knew that, with a man who had been, and since when he had been convicted of soliciting a 14-year-old girl for prostitution. I mean, is that the sort of person we want representing our country?
Well, clearly it hasn't worked out well as a job, and it doesn't look like a good judgment that he was appointed, clearly.
So, and how embarrassing do you think this is going to be for both Keir Starmer and indeed the US president? Of course, he himself previously was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, everyone in New York was at this press conference later this afternoon.
I mean, I hear this press conference is going to be quite tightly controlled, and you've been to many press conferences, so when you hear the words sort of 3 questions for each group of journalists, you realise this is an exercise in control.
Yeah.
But the embarrassing question for the president will be, the Brits fired their ambassador over his links with Epstein. How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
The embarrassing question for the Prime Minister is still, really? Why did you appoint? Exactly the point you've just made. So there'll be difficult moments at the press conference, I guess. But I think the story, this may be really, really wrong. In terms of the UK angle to it, is slightly running out of steam now.
Okay, very interesting to hear that. Lord Darroch, really appreciate you joining us. Former UK ambassador to the US, former national security advisor as well. I mean, Benjamin Butterworth, interesting to hear his perspective on this, as someone who himself had to resign over these diplomatic cables. But again, that was his job, to be honest about what he thought of the Trump regime. But you couldn't then carry on being our ambassador in that scenario. But I mean, there were other issues as well. Let's be honest about that. But he this high risk, but high reward idea for Peter Mandelson in that job. Well, definitely high risk. Who knows how much the reward comes from that? How embarrassing and difficult do you think this press conference is going to be, or do you think they will orchestrate it to make it very tight?
Well, the hard part for Keir Starmer is that if he's asked about Lord Mandelson and him saying, well, he had to be sacked because of his links to Epstein, because of his defence and friendship of Epstein in the past, that is the only thing Keir Starmer can say. But then he sat next to the guy that was also known to be a friend of Epstein. But
he did dump him, I think, as a friend, before there were any charges brought.
But right,
which is it's a fair point.
How any reasonable person would behave.
Yeah, well, not unless you're a member of the royal family, like Prince Andrew. Yeah,
indeed. Although I wouldn't have made a friend like Epstein in the first place, given how blatant it would seem his misbehaviour was.
It certainly does appear. Yeah.
But how does Keir Starmer defend his getting rid of Mandelson while sat next to another man plagued by the same question?
Absolutely.
I'm sure they've got an answer prepared. I can't wait to hear
You'd like to think that, but the level of incompetence that we do see in Downing Street, you wonder whether they've thought of that, because this would be Director of Communications 101, but they haven't been very sure-footed so far. 12:21 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then I want to hear from you. Lots of calls on the board. We'll get to as many as we can. 0344 499 1000 on all the big topics we're discussing. This is Talk.
we know from endless examples that women are often persuaded, cajoled into staying in abusive, physically, sexually abusive relationships by these courts. We know that they lose the custody of their children when the children reach a certain age. We know that they're not given the same financial standing and rights to inheritance. It really is an absolute regime that has no place in this country of ours.
DAB Plus on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back. It's 12:25. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Just to let you know, after that one in, one out shambles, we saw no one being out at all, but one coming in at least one on Saturday from France. We have actually had an Indian man who's a legal migrant arrived in early August. He has been deported this morning, we understand. Extraordinary. So extraordinary. The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has made a statement. She says this is an important first step to securing our borders. One of them has been sent back. 31,000 have arrived this year. One's been sent back. Oh, absolutely, Shabana. This is an important first step to securing our borders. She says it sends a message to people crossing in small boats. If you enter the UK illegally, we will seek to remove you. And one of you, up to 31,000 will go. She doesn't say that bit. She says, I will continue to challenge any last-minute vexatious attempts to frustrate a removal in the courts. The UK will always play its part in helping those genuinely fleeing persecution, but this must be done through safe, legal and managed routes, not dangerous crossings. Well, I think we all feel reassured by that, do we not? Let's get straight to your calls and all the topics we are talking about today. Jason is on the line. He's in Wiltshire. And Jason, you want to be talking about this Trump state visit. What do you want to say?
Well, I'm a bit early, Julie. I just got to finish my sandwich a minute. Hang on. So I got told I was the second caller.
I'm sorry. I wanted to come to you first because I wanted to come to you about the state visit. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
my fault.
I'm just indulging in my my glorious meal like they were last night.
Yeah. Is it as good as the state banquet?
Well, it's a cheese and tomato sandwich. So
it's the greatest sandwich.
You decide on that
It's
one.
the greatest. I'll take that over that fancy food. Jason, do you want me to go to save it and come back to you when you finish your mouthful?
No, it's all right. I'm finished. But thank you for taking the
live radio, everybody. Award-winning live radio.
All right. Yeah, I'm going back, obviously, with the visit. Personally, I don't think it could have happened at a worse time because there we are in a cost of living crisis. People are struggling to eat, to pay their bills, etc. And there we have Comrade Starmer sort of laying on his social champagne, big meals and all expenses.
Well, it was the king. The king does that bit. I mean, we pay for it all, obviously.
Yeah, but obviously, even whoever it is. I mean, do we see the king moaning about how he's going to turn his gas heating on in the winter?
We do. I'm sure it's all solar panels.
Well, I've got solar panels. Yeah, right. But I think that money really could have been spent on something better for the country.
Hold on, though. At that point, then we wouldn't have any major events. We wouldn't do, fireworks. We wouldn't do. We just literally wouldn't do anything at all because there's always going to be someone who's homeless or someone who's poor. And I mean.
Yeah, but then we've got everybody saying about the cost of living crisis. Yeah. Inflation's gone up through the roof. Food is now gone up, what did they say, 15%?
Well, 5% officially, but it seems to be a lot more than that.
Yeah, but how much do you reckon that event costs?
Oh, we're in the millions. We're in the millions. The security alone. But here's the thing. If we get a massive boost in terms of an economic deal, a trade deal, so we can keep some of our key industries like steel going, if this boost, I would have thought this would be a big boost to tourism. American tourists spend a fortune when they come to Europe, and having them go, oh, wow, let's go to Windsor Castle, I mean, that was the worst accent ever, then, that would be a good thing. Tourism industry, massive employer in this country.
Yeah, so it is. But also what I would like to say is I've got a lot of time for Mr. Trump, but he's a businessman. So do you really think that whatever he's going to do is going to benefit Britain with whatever his deals are going to be?
Wait a minute, but that's the idea that there's it's a lose-lose or win. No. I mean, most trade deals, most deals that are done benefit both sides. Like these big AI companies, they're not coming to invest in Britain out of the goodness of their hearts. They're doing it to make a profit.
Yeah, but like I said, I personally think the money could have been spent.
You're not happy about it.
In a better sort of, in a better state when you sort of you see the state of Conrad Starmer has left our country at the moment.
This is true. This is true. No, a lot of people agree with you, Jason. Thank you. You go and finish your sarnie now. David is on the line in Hertfordshire and hopefully not eating his lunch. Good afternoon to you, David.
Hi, Julie. Thanks for taking the call.
Thanks for calling. What do you want to talk about?
No, I've had my lunch, so you're okay. I wanted to talk, if I could, Julia, about this proposed Palestinian state from a practical viewpoint.
Yep.
I think, myself, the countries that are pushing for this, all well-meaning they may be, but I think it's really virtue signalling on steroids.
Yeah.
What we have is a situation where somebody's going to propose a state. What are the boundaries, the borders of this state? Question mark. Who's actually going to govern this state? Question mark.
Yep.
Who's the leader of this state? Question mark. Is this state, if it's formed, be prepared to accept its borders and be friendly with its adjacent countries like Israel, for example, or is it not going to? Will it seek to expand its territory into adjacent states?
Yeah.
And how will people like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Palestinian Authority view this state, accept this state, or will they then break out into a kind of civil war fighting for who's actually going to take over the new state?
I mean, we're opening a can of worms here.
Ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
And why do you think, we spoke to the Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister who said she was very clear about why she thought Keir Starmer was doing this. Why do you think he's doing it?
I think, well, being brutally frank, I think it's a double thing. He wants to be seen on the world stage as this kind of super statesman, which isn't. He's pathetic. And also, I think within his own ranks, he has a large Muslim content which he's trying to appease in some way. And he thinks by doing this, he's going to kind of secure his votes as opposed to fragment into Muslim MPs, etc., etc.
I think it's really that basic. I really appreciate that call, David. Thank you very much indeed. 12:31 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about freedom of speech crackdowns here. The Americans criticise, but are they actually cutting back on freedom of speech where it's constitutionally protected by the First Amendment in America after basically the cancellation of one of the most famous late-night TV hosts, Jimmy Kimmel? We'll talk about that with the Free Speech Union's Ben Jones up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk the Home of Common Sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:34 is the time. Now, free speech, we think, is one of the big issues that may come up behind the scenes in the bilateral talks between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump at Chequers today. We've seen, haven't we, not just Donald Trump, but also J.D. Vance being very critical of Britain and indeed of Keir Starmer over issues of free speech being curtailed. They've raised the issue of Lucy Connolly, and of course Graham Linehan's arrested at Heathrow Airport by five-armed guards for some tweets that he'd written, and of course Lucy Connolly being imprisoned for a best part, well, over a year for what she wrote in the wake of the Southport attack. But interestingly, those issues continue on both sides of the Atlantic. We'll talk about both stories now with Ben Jones. He's Director of Case Operations and Outreach at the Free Speech Union. Good afternoon to you, Ben.
Hi, Julia.
Hi, thanks so much for joining us. Let's start on this side of the Atlantic. An extraordinary story, and you, the Free Speech Union, my own union, I'm a member of the union myself, are involved in, with an American woman who's a cancer patient. She is a Trump supporter who was confronted by British police over some posts that someone had complained about. Tell us what's happened.
This really is one of the more extraordinary things that we've seen at the Free Speech Union. This concerns one of our members, Deborah Anderson. She's lived in England for many, many years. She had a knock on the door from a police officer who came into her house and explained that he needed to speak to her because there had been a complaint that she had upset somebody with something that she had written on Facebook.
Gosh, I mean, I could get a knock on the door every day.
Well, quite. Couldn't we all? She had the presence of mind to start recording this conversation. Millions of people have now seen this video since we posted it at 10 p.m. last night. Right. She asked the obvious question, am I under arrest? Have I broken the law?
Well,
to which the answers are no.
Well, let's play a little clip of this exchange, which she did record with the visiting from the police.
We believe you've written on Facebook has upset someone.
You're here because somebody got upset. Is it against the law? Am I being arrested?
You're not being arrested.
Then what are you doing here?
My plan was, if you were admitting that it was you who wrote the comment, you could just make an apology to the person.
I'm not apologising to anybody, I can tell you that.
I mean, good for her, Ben Jones. I love her already. But it's extraordinary. The police saying, no, you're not arrested. But you need to admit you've done something wrong. You need to apologise. This is something that would happen if you've got two kids and they've had a fight and they're sort of 7 and 8 years old, and mum and dad say you have to apologise, otherwise, you know, you're going to go to your bedroom without any dinner. I mean, what business is it of the police to turn up at someone's house to ask them to apologise for something?
Yes, absolutely. And the policeman in question, he looks rightly, absolutely mortified, I think, to be there. But as Deborah says in the video, he shouldn't have been there. He should not have been knocking on her door. He should not be in her house. He should not have been instructed to have gone to her house.
So what was the awful thing that she had said online that someone had complained about and for which she apparently was being ordered by the police to apologise for?
Well, this is the mystery. The police have not been able to tell her exactly what she said. Now, in fairness to the police, we don't want them keeping millions of records of what people have said on social media that's upset somebody. They appear to have deleted it this time, so at least they've got that bit right. But the upshot is they have not been able to tell her what she said. But they have been able to tell her, as in that clip, that it was not criminal, that she was not being arrested. So again, the question, why are they there? Why are they wasting their time doing this?
When there are plenty of crimes to investigate.
And that's the point that Deborah makes. I mean, she uses all of my own lines. I can only repeat what she said in that video, Julia. She says there are murders, there are burglaries, there are rapes going on, there is crime in this local area. Why aren't you dealing with this? And he says, well, that's not my job today. Today I'm here about this social media post.
It's genuinely extraordinary. But this is the thing, we have the same thing with lots of people who've ended up being questioned by the police, whether it's a non-crime hate incident or a supposed hate speech, something criminal. Often people are not told who's made a complaint, what the complaint is, or indeed what they are supposedly have said. They have to. Often, I remember Alison Pearson. She had to work out which tweet it was that the police turned up on her doorstep for. And it is on Remembrance Sunday. It is absolutely extraordinary. This keeps happening, but we are constantly being told. I mean, the debate at the moment is from senior police officers saying, look, we need to have everything clarified. We need the law clarified because we don't, you know, we're being hung out to dry, and we need to give police officers more discretion. Is the answer to give police officers more discretion? Because my fear is actually, given how woke senior police officers now not just are but are required to be, you can't get the job unless you sign up to all the DEI madness on lots of these things, that actually we don't want the police to have more discretion because that will mean more visits like that to more people like us.
Well, I fear that's right, because in this case, it's clear it's not criminal. No law has been broken here. And so at every step of this process, as soon as the complaint came in, they should have said, no, this is not a police matter. As soon as this police officer is instructed to go...
police time.
Right. He should have said, no, I'm not going. There is no basis for me to be there. She has not broken the law. He should not have followed that instruction. He shouldn't have been given that instruction. The complaint should never have been taken seriously in the first place.
But here's the thing. So she's not going to end up with being arrested, or the Free Speech Union got involved. Again, I do not understand why anyone in this country is not a member of the Free Speech Union because of this. These sort of things could happen to anybody for often very innocuous things. There'll be a record of this somewhere. Often people get 6 on the record, and if they apply for a job, this will come up. But also, people are intimidated. The process is the punishment, as everyone says. Police turning up on your door. I mean, it's embarrassing if the neighbours see it. You feel under threat. But also, crucially, the police officer who turns up, they're never disciplined. The person who sent him, he's not disciplined. The chief police, who's allowed that culture, they're not disciplined. There's never any reprisals for this, no matter how wrong it is.
No, and we can see we've done research at the Free Speech Union in the last couple of years about whether police forces are doing any free speech training for their officers or not, and overwhelmingly they are not. And that's how you get scenarios like this unfolding, because the police are in these jobs and they've got no idea actually that speech rights do have protections in this country. Yeah, indeed. I mean, again, we had that big battle over the trans issue. I mean, Maya Forstater having to actually, now with sex matters, go all the way, right to the top court in the land to have it established that it's a protected belief. Well, it's not a belief, it's a fact that men and women are different biological sexes and you can't change sex. But I mean, there we are. We know that we've had criticism from the American leadership over what's been going on in Britain. I mean, a number of them people who've been represented by the Free Speech Union. They, of course, in America have the First Amendment. They've got protection for freedom of speech. But it's been a big outcry after Jimmy Kimmel, who is one of the biggest late-night chat show hosts in America at ABC, and he has been taken off air, we're told, indefinitely over what was claimed to be offensive comments about Charlie Kirk, of course, and particularly speaking about the suspect who has been charged with his murder. Now, we're told that Nexstar Media, one of the biggest owners of television stations in the US, basically said they would no longer broadcast his show on local stations. That meant a massive loss of revenue for ABC and Disney, who own them. But we also had threats from, now this is very much a political appointee, Brendan Carr. He's the Federal Communications Commission chair of the FCC. He said that the comments made by Kimmel were truly sick and threatened ABC and Disney, urging them to take action, saying basically we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to take action on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead. They have a licence granted by us, and that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest. I'm going to play a quick clip of what Jimmy Kimmel had to say. There's various other jokes. He makes some off-colour jokes about Donald Trump. Got no issue with any of those. Everyone's entitled to make jokes about anything, in my view. But here's what he had to say about the suspect, already arrested, already details known about him, who is suspected of murdering Charlie Kirk.
Some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Now, Ben Jones, do you think this is a case of cancel culture and imposition on freedom of speech, or is this just, someone going on television telling a blatant lie that he would have known to be untrue to score political points himself and then facing his comeuppance?
Well, the content of what he says seems to be complete nonsense. What I would say about the broader point you raised, though, I saw a video and lots of clips of Charlie Kirk obviously circulating on social media since last week. There's one particular one where somebody comes to the stand, a left-wing person, he's obviously quite nervous and he's trying to make this argument. He's not doing particularly well. And Charlie Kirk stops him and starts to make his argument for him and says, look, this is what I think you are trying to say, and I'm going to try and articulate your point of view, and I'm going to give my response to it. And I found that actually very moving. And it seems to me a great pity that the legacy of Charlie Kirk should be a new round of cancel culture, even for people who've said deeply unwise, and in this case, patently, it appears false comments like that.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, he's entitled to make a joke about Donald Trump, and he said, you know, this is like Donald Trump's response to the murder is like a child grieving for the goldfish rather than someone grieving for a friend. And he's entitled to make those jokes and as much as he wants, and I would absolutely fight against it. But Jimmy Kimmel is someone who has celebrated every cancellation of anyone he disagrees with quite happily. Including, you know, Donald Trump being taken off Twitter even when he was president and the like. If someone does that, now I'm probably like you in terms of I will go and defend people every single day of the week who I vehemently disagree with for their right to say things, as long as they're not breaking the law, inciting violence and the like. I will defend their right and not to face cancel culture. But in this case, is it not anything to do with cancel culture? Has he quite simply breached the terms of his contract? If you go on telly and you say something that is blatantly, provably untrue, that you must at that time have known to be untrue, because we'd had press conference, we had information about this suspect. He wasn't MAGA. He was motivated quite clearly, as much as we know motivation, by the opposite, being opposed to MAGA. That if you do that, you're probably in breach of your own contract, and you go.
I think most of that is probably right. I would rather not live in a culture in which people cannot make any mistake. I say mistake,
True.
but perhaps that's too
I mean, that would have gone through 20 editings. 40 people would have been involved in that. It wasn't a mistake.
The other thing I'd say in terms of some of the broader reaction and the allegation of cancel culture now coming from the right in America is that we've seen in this country with the Online Safety Act, for example, where a Conservative government drastically increases the power of the state to censor and then immediately bequeaths it to a left-wing government by losing in an election.
Yeah.
So it seems deeply unwise to increase the state's power to censor people when there's every chance you are going to lose the next election.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed for that, Ben Jones from the Free Speech Union. Just a quick word from Benjamin Butterworth on this, because I know you disagree with me on this, because it seems to me that people talk about this is outrageous, blatant, you know, this FCC, Federal Communications Commission, you know, it's blatant political activism. But we have Ofcom controlling what we say. Ofcom has dictated that climate change, climate science is a settled science and we're not allowed to question it, for goodness sake.
Ofcom is right.
Well, A, it's not, and B, they're not.
I think the best point...
It's a left-wing organisation.
I think the best point that... it's also a very small organisation, so if it's...
They have a lot of power.
If it's
Ofcom can take me, they can take my station off air on a whim if they want to.
And also, if it's going to take on online content, then it's going to really struggle with the amount of people they have looking at it. But I thought the best point Ben Jones made to you there was, are people not allowed to make mistakes?
I agree.
Should Jimmy Kimmel... I mean...
It's not a mistake. It wasn't a slip of the tongue.
I suspect he can still pay...
It wasn't a late-night tweet.
I suspect he can still pay his mortgage. But should he lose his job, full stop, because...
But he celebrated all these people who disagreed with losing their livelihoods.
Well, I think...
I always fight against it, but in this case, I think it's a different case.
I think the Tucker Carlson case and lying about an election fraud is
I
rather
had
more
no
serious.
issue with Tucker Carlson being fired, I can assure you that.
Well, he's bigger than ever now, so it's not much
good for him, whatever, but I wouldn't give the man the time of day.
I think this will have a chilling effect that we're already seeing on free speech in the US, and I just think it's rich of JD Vance to lecture us when this is what they do with their own power.
Very fair point. And indeed, when people disagree with people shoot people in America, which is rather different from what happens here. It's not mostly, not yet as bad here. 12:47 is the time. Up next, we're going to talk about the small matter, the economy. Oh yes, it's all going down the plug hole. We'll talk about that with Mark Littlewood. This is Talk.
tells me that number 10 have been trying to keep quite a tight lid on the number of questions that will be asked. Donald Trump, he's a pretty freewheeling guy, but he is also the guest here. Normally, when he hosts these sort of press conferences on his home turf in the Oval Office or in the East Wing of the White House, he takes a lot of questions, and he doesn't have a sort of pre-selected list like Starmer likes to have of he knows what's coming, and he's much more of a free for all. I suspect they're going to meet somewhere in the middle there.
DAB Plus on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, coming up to 12:51. Let's talk about the small matter of the economy, because we touched on this yesterday. But while we've got, state visits and we've got, migration issues, there's still the matter of us being able to afford to pay our rent, our mortgage, buy food and pay the electricity and the gas bills. And certainly with the weather we've got now, we're going to be heading into that territory pretty soon when it comes to the heating bill going on. Well, this week, the Office of Budget Responsibility apparently told Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, that things aren't looking very good on the productivity front. So what does that mean for us when it comes to what's going to happen at the next budget to be announced on November the 26th? Let's talk to the Director of Popular Conservatism. That's Mark Littlewood. Afternoon to you, Mark.
Hi, Julia. Good to be with you.
Thank you very much for joining us. So we keep being told, the latest headline, Starmer could be blown off course by OBR productivity bombshell. I mean, it seems to me there's bombshell after bombshell after bombshell of bad economic news. What is the productivity issue?
So productivity is a measure of how much we produce per hour, not our total output, but per hour. Are we producing more or less than we were last year? And if you can get your productivity up, I don't know if you're making widgets and suddenly next year you can make 10% more widgets in each hour that you put in, your productivity's gone up 10%. Big problem in the UK. Productivity has flatlined for a long while now. I mean, this predates this Labour government. So we're not getting better at doing things. And that's really the driving force behind growth in an economy. OK, you can work harder. You can decide you're going to work 70 hours a week, 80 hours a week, 90 hours a week. That will produce more output. But the magic ingredient is to work smarter, not harder.
Produce more from less. And in other countries, and we know America's got much higher productivity, but we apparently have lower productivity than countries. OK, yeah, Germany, fair enough. But than France. I've never really got to grips with that.
Yes, well, I mean,
I've been to France.
I mean, you've got to be a bit careful about these numbers because it measures people in work and it measures your work per hour. So if you've got a large number of people who aren't working at all and a number of people who are in work and becoming slightly more productive in their 25 hours a week, I exaggerate for effect, your productivity is looking good.
Right.
The French are quite good at that. They in general, in their workforce, squeeze out more per hour than we do.
If you don't allow for the 2 or 3 hour lunch break in the middle. But there we are. Well, that's the thing. Okay, but we know productivity in the private sector has been much better than in the public sector. I saw an extraordinary graph showing, going up, and certainly in the wake of the technology in the private sector, it sort of goes up like that in the private sector. Yeah. But of course, America, it's doing that. I'll go way up. But in the public sector, it's virtually flatlined for 20 years. And yet we've had so much technology which should make people more productive, whether you're assessing how many migrants are legitimate asylum seekers or doing the bureaucracy in the NHS or any other aspect, or getting passport, anything that the public sector does. You'd have thought that the technology we've now got, everything going online, would have improved productivity.
That's exactly right. It's not just the bureaucracy, Julia. I mean, it's, basically, year on year or certainly decade on decade, we should be getting better at cancer treatment. We should be getting better at heart bypass operations. Yeah. We should be getting better at physiotherapy. It's the whole lot. And where we've got things, I think, the wrong way round is that public sector workers whose productivity has not improved, at least in aggregate, have typically been rewarded with enhanced pay. Now, if you're in the private sector, even if you're a busy bee and a decent worker yourself, if your company isn't becoming more productive per head, good luck trying to get any kind of meaningful pay rises. Yeah. So we've got to really tag pay in the public sector to productivity, give them the incentive to improve that productivity. And unfortunately, we haven't. They might be working hard, but they're not working smart. And therefore, big public sector pay rises is essentially a reward for failure.
Well, indeed. And again, we've got, there's a couple of other interesting stories about people on benefits. And we've got young graduates. Ministers have been urged not to give up on welfare reform. I mean, there's going to be no welfare reform under this government. We know that. They were going to reform 5 billion quid's worth of it. It's a drop in the ocean. It's money down the back of the sofa in terms of what we're spending. But basically got a system where a new graduate, someone's worked really hard, got good A-levels, got a good degree, they can end up taking home less than someone on sickness benefits. No wonder a lot of them end up on sickness benefits. But also the extraordinary situation where we had a BBC programme, a guest on Radio 4, talking about out-of-work benefits, which are up nearly 80%. They've grown nearly 80% in just a few years. I'm saying since 2018, and saying that they were up a small amount. I mean, no wonder a lot of people in that world don't think there's a problem if they don't even accept that an 80% increase in the number of people on benefits is not a large amount.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, the welfare system is now out of control, and we're seeing, I think, what any economist would expect to see. If you pay more and more people to do less and less work, more and more people will do less and less work. We should be unsurprised by this. And we can wring our hands and say how terrible it is that a young graduate, perhaps getting their first job, doesn't get as high a salary as they might get in welfare benefits if they simply signed off sick. But in the private sector, a smart company will only pay you for the productivity you produce. If you can produce for the company £25,000 a year of output, they'll happily pay you up to £25,000 a year.
But not more.
They ain't going to pay you £30,000, £40,000, £50,000 a year if your output doesn't match that. That's a route to going bust as a company. So the issue here isn't so much dialing up pay. In a proper functioning market economy, your pay should, reflect the output that you're giving. It's cutting welfare.
Just finally, very briefly, say very briefly, we've got a budget coming up in November. Given how bad all the numbers are in every direction, growth, inflation, unemployment, productivity, how bad is it going to be for me and my audience and you in the pocket?
It's going to be pretty bad because Labour's run out of ideas or doesn't have the political will to get through the reforms that are necessary. We've basically got to reduce spending, right? And there is no will at all.
So the taxes are going to go up.
So they're going to try and put taxes up. But then there's a problem there as well, that our taxes are probably so high that if you dial up the rates, you won't necessarily get in more revenue. Look what they've done to the non-doms. Oh, here's an easy cash cow. What have we seen? Millionaires fleeing the country like there's no tomorrow.
At the end of the day,
try and reach for the tax lever, but it will not work. It will just cause more.
And it's going to be those ordinary working families who end up paying it all because they're the only people who can't leave. Mark Littlewood from the Popular Conservatism, thank you so much indeed for that on that happy note. Benjamin Butterworth, I mean, we are, productivity, inflation, unemployment, everything. There are no figures going in the right direction. The things we want to go up are going down or flatline, and the things we want to go down are going up.
And after the repeated sort of resignations, Keir Starmer's position is a lot weaker. I was talking to a Labour MP the other day.
Why would you do that? No, sorry.
No. But I was talking to a Labour MP the other day that said, I'm not sure Keir Starmer will make it to the budget. No. And if the budget does what it has to do, which is be rather unpleasant, then I'd be surprised if Keir Starmer survives after that.
Well, no,
I was quite amazed.
Rachel Reeves doesn't survive to another budget after this one. I think Keir Starmer, big question mark for after the next May election, Scotland, Wales, and indeed lots of local elections in London and elsewhere. It's going to be absolutely fascinating to watch. But at the end of the day, talking about ordinary people struggling to pay their bills. Talking of ordinary people struggling, Ian Collins is here.
All right, precious.
All right, darling. Go on, Governor.
We're talking about the special